President.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's Budget Council meeting, the 25th of February. Can I ask Joe to do the evacuation procedure, please?
When the continuous alarm sounds, you must evacuate the building by one of the designated exits. From this room, you follow the green running person signs to the exit using either the marble staircase at the end of the building nearest to Bath Abbey or the main staircase. Please do not use the lifts. The assembly point for this building is in Kingston Buildings at the side of Bath Abbey, past the taxi rank. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And do we have any apologies for absence?
We do. I've had apologies from councillors Deborah Collins, Sarah Evans, Alan Hale. Grant Johnson is on his way, apparently, but maybe Grant if he doesn't make it. Anne Morgan, June Player, Malcolm Treby, and Dave Wood. And if there's any others, can you shout out? Thank you.
Grant was last heard of.
Thank you, Joe. So, declarations of interest. The monitoring officer has granted a general dispensation to all councillors in respect of their payment of council tax, being parish councillors and school governors, in regard to item 8. A specific dispensation of disclosable pecuniary interest declared by councillors has also been granted, and Joe will read out.
Specific dispensation has been granted to Councillors Sarah Warren, Saskia Helches and Sarah Moore, who have a family member in receipt of council send support or social care support.
Councillor Hodge as well.
Councillor Hodge as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Ball. So his wife now works for AIM, she used to work for HCRG.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want me to say it again?
Yes, please.
I said, my interest is that my wife's now working for Baines, where she used to work for HCLG or whatever it's called.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Right, the minutes of the 21st of November and the... Sorry? Oh, sorry, Tim. Please, Councillor Ball.
Yes, I have a grandson in receipt of social support.
Did you get that, Joe?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Right, sorry, now we'll move on to item 4. We'll move on to item 4, minutes of the 21st of November, including the special meeting. Do I have a move? Councillor Guy, a seconder? And Councillor Elliott, thank you. And all those in favour to agree with that? Thank you, everyone. So, announcements from the Chair or the Chief Exec. So, to remind everybody to switch off or put their mobile devices on silent. And when you finish speaking through your microphone, please remember to switch it off. Remind councillors they need to log on to their units. Has everybody successfully logged on this evening or may need help? Doesn't look like anybody needs help. That's great. If the mic battery light is flashing, do not swap with another unit as the camera is tracked to the councillor that's speaking through that mic. Just indicate to the operator and they will quickly change it, but they have all been charged before this meeting. Just to let you know that this meeting is being webcast this evening. Anybody that wishes not to be filmed, please let the operator know. Remind councillors that following dispatch of the main agenda pack, Annex 13 of the budget report has been circulated and is available on the website. So to remind councillors that all votes on the budget, item 8, are required to be a recorded vote, and that is going to be recorded by voting on your machine, not going around the room asking your names, okay? So, I would like to congratulate Julie Davey, who's a Senior Registrar Officer, who has recently been awarded the OBE for her work campaigning to tackle male violence. I don't know if everybody has met Julie, but her daughter lost her life a few years ago because of this, but she's worked tirelessly to tackle against violence against women. So, congratulations to Julie. So on a sadder note, I would like councillors to stand for a minute to remember Doug Deacon and Jeremy Sparks, please. Thank you. Item 6, any urgent business agreed by the Chair? There is none. So we now move on to item 7, items from the public. May I ask Alistair Barron to come up, please?
Chair, thank you for the opportunity to address the Council. My name is Alistair Barron and I'm speaking as a Barthwick Estate resident. My comments concern the Sydney Place LTN and LTNs more widely. It is hard to understand why this LTN was built out in final form before the start of the trial. Why was it not trialled with temporary planters, which would have been low cost, easy to install and easy to remove? Surely, in a genuine trial, this would have been the norm. Your action seems to presuppose that the trial would be made permanent. Otherwise, why would you spend £306,000 before the trial had started? The displacement of 4,000 traffic movements a day onto the A36 is significant. So, surely the concerns of the Barthwick Estate residents who live adjacent to it should have been a priority. Another hard thing to swallow is that the LTN benefits a small number of residents when many more object. To me, this is simply favouritism. The Council's own press announcement just before making it permanent recognised that only 24% of respondents to the public consultation survey supported it, demonstrating its unpopularity. Regarding trialling, the A36 has been closed at Limpley Stoke for long periods. This means that traffic flows are not representative, and so making decisions based on them must be unreliable. When multiple communities and interest groups are involved, a single-member decision is not appropriate. Surely the whole council, with councillors representing many different groups, would want to consider those many areas of interest and make that decision as a whole council. More widely, the LTN issue is extremely divisive and will continue to be so. Just look at the multiple opposition groups across Bath who oppose or feel underrepresented in the decision-making process. One reason for that is that the council's power is massive compared to that of busy individuals. It's simply unrealistic to expect individuals to read numerous documents, but why even bother when there's a widespread feeling that nothing will alter the council's mind? My plea to every councillor here tonight is to get engaged, because the injustices built into the system won't go away and need urgent resolution. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Can group leaders please indicate if you wish to have a question? If you have a question. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Hi, Alistair. Over here. I have a question for you. So what effect has the roadworks and closure to the A36 had on the traffic data?
The road was partially opened. Baines found that traffic was 17% down on baseline. That means, in addition to the 3,100 vehicles displaced from Sydney Road during the trial, an additional 1,500 vehicles will be added to the congestion when the road reopens fully this summer. As a result, the traffic increases on the boundary roads, which, as you know, have taken some additional traffic, will rise by a further 50%.
Thank you. Councillor Tim Warren.
Thank you, Chair. It works as well. The idea of these are to help the clean air zones, etc., etc., etc. Do you think it's beneficial to help with the clean air around the area you live, or not?
Well, yes, certainly. I would think it would be beneficial, but the additional traffic has made it worse. So I'm afraid it doesn't help me personally.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you for your statement. How has the criteria for the key decision been made?
Well, I think in law, a decision which affects more than one ward qualifies as a key decision. In this case, Bath Avon North, and as well as the Bathwick and other areas. So yes, I certainly think it does qualify for a key decision.
Just wanted to explain, because I think Councillor Moss and Councillor Jackson are a little bit confused because Robin hasn't been asked the question. So to keep things a little bit tighter in public statements, we're asking for group leaders to indicate if they have a question. So I won't be going around individually to ask each one a question. Does that make sense?
It does. Councillor Jackson has indicated that she'd like to ask a question which I was unanticipated. So I defer to Councillor Jackson.
Thank you.
Oh dear, now what have I done? Thank you. Just a very brief question. Considering the diversion of the traffic to which you refer, are you aware of the benefits of the D2X being diverted through Radstock and its popularity?
No, I think that sounds a good idea, but I don't know anything about it, so I can't comment further.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. John Avent, please.
Okay. Chair, I'm grateful for the opportunity to address the council members. I'm John Avent. I'm speaking as a Bathwick resident and a Bath business owner. My comments concerned LTNs across Bath, but most specifically the Sydney Place LTN. I've lived in Bath over 60 years, born here, went to school here, worked here, run my own business here, and work on historic buildings across the UK and beyond. Despite all the wonderful cities I visit, I've chosen Bath, and specifically Bathwick, to me the most livable of neighbourhoods imaginable. Sydney Gardens opened in 1795 to provide an open space for amusements and relaxation for the residents of Bath. The most beautiful place to walk, preamble, relax, all the things Baines believed didn't exist and will come from closing Sydney Place. But all that has changed now by the actions of the council, trying to solve a problem that didn't exist. The mythical rat run, creating dangerous roads. Not true. A Freedom of Information request showed no recorded accidents on the road they've closed. Why would Baines lie about this in the statements made? In fact, the road where the traffic is displaced to, Beckford's Road and Bathwick Street, did have recorded accidents. So Baines' solution to safety, close the safer road. Baines claimed they would consult local residents on the trial closure. So I requested from Baines what was the criteria on which a decision would be made. Silence. Never mind, we have local ward councillors who will surely listen to residents. Councillor Rigby, silence, no response, no engagement. Monitoring data from the trial. That would be useful to look at and to form an opinion on what the trial revealed. Baines refused to release the data, saying the trial was continuing and the data hadn't been analysed yet. The data was eventually released, but only after the single-member decision had been made. The closure means I travel with other vehicles heading north of the city when I want to go south, adding congestion. Or alternatively, I now take the real rat runs that Baines have created from this scheme. The extra traffic congestion around Beckford's Road and Bathwick Street Junction is causing impatient drivers, delayed drivers to jump the red lights. I witness this regularly. Such dangerous behaviour occurring at the entrance to Sydney Gardens, the livable oasis that was always there, but is now more dangerous to access as a result of this scheme. The majority of local residents are against the new Sydney Place livable neighbourhood, and that is well documented. I visited RMP, Weir Hobhouse, to express my views and objections to the new Sydney Place LTN, and was reassured by her support. I commend her willingness to engage and discuss. Unfortunately, she also informed me that the council would not engage with her. We have an MP that listens, but a council that does not. The Nolan principles require councillors to adhere to.
Thank you, John. May I ask you to bring your statement to a close?
There are the Nolan principles to adhere to, and we all know those. Bathwick used to be the most beautiful livable neighbourhood until this council stopped listening to the people who live there.
Thank you, John. Can group leaders please indicate Councillor Warren?
Okay. When you said no response, was that no response or just a response you didn't like?
No response.
Totally ignored?
No response.
Okay.
Councillor Hughes, did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I'll go to Councillor Wright then in a minute.
Hello, and thank you for your statement. How long can an ETRO be put in place for?
Sorry,
Can you not hear me?
no, sorry, yeah. Could you repeat it?
Oh, sure. How long can an ETRO be put in place for before a decision has to be made?
I don't know the answer to that.
Councillor Hughes.
Are you aware that the decision to make the LTN permanent has been called in collectively by the opposition groups?
I am now aware, yeah.
Councillor Guy.
A factual question. Are you saying that the Livable Neighbourhood team and your ward council, you've received no correspondence from them at all?
I've had one email from Councillor Rigby, and that was in connection with a debate that occurred about the presence of basement vaults on Sydney Place and the existence of them, to which I'd informed that the vaults, because I have the maps of vaults under, and the vaults don't go under there. So I have not had a response.
And you've emailed the Liverpool Neighbourhood team, which is the team which is part of the, which is the body which your residents are asked to put their comments forward to. If you emailed them and they've not responded?
No, that's not what I said. What I said was I had no response from our local ward councillors. I have been in touch with the Liverpool Neighbourhood team. I had a conversation with them. Their response was this was akin to smoking bans that people didn't like at the start but now accept, and I found that quite a surprising
Thank you, John.
response.
I think you've answered Councillor Guy's question. Thank you. So we're going to ask you to step down now. Thank you very much. Benazir Jatoui.
Thank you, Chair. Dear councillors, I sit here before you as one of the 8 trustees of Voices, a small Bath-based grassroots charity that provides domestic abuse survivors prevention and recovery support. Voices was established in 2014 by 4 survivors of domestic violence who believe, after having gone through the existing services in Baines, that the system did not cater effectively to them. Their experience was never heard, valued, or used to better the services. For the past 11 years, this small organization has had a huge impact on the lives of survivors in this area and has provided trauma-informed services to hundreds of survivors of domestic abuse. Testimonies by survivors themselves detail the changes Voices has made to their lives. Voices has been successful in creating a platform where lived experience informs and improves service protection. Having worked in the area of human rights and gender-based violence policy and legislation for many years with the United Nations, I say with confidence that Voices' approach of centering the survivor is unique and fundamental to changing the services that they need. In addition to providing services to survivors, it has also made very effective interventions, such as being a member of the CAFCAS Learning and Improvement Board, and working with UCL and Bristol University on GBV-related research projects that aim to feed into government policy. Voices is now in a funding crisis. Because of this, we are foreseeing potential cuts in our service provision or even closure of some of our services. Baines relies on charities, including Voices, to pick up on their core work. Are you, respected councillors, prepared to see a charity close that provides essential services that the local authority itself relies on and refers clients to? 1 in 4 women suffer domestic abuse in the UK, and the figure is only rising. All political parties have also made some form of commitment towards addressing gender-based violence. Why then are there no funds when there are promises? According to Women's Aid, there's a £321 million gap in domestic abuse services, and funders are closing and there's no council funding left. Voices representatives come before you today to seek your support. Will the council meet us to discuss long-term core funding support and a free or subsidised safe space to continue our vital work? Without this, many survivors of abuse, the most vulnerable amongst us, often where children are involved, will be left without support they need to recover and move forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can group leaders indicate Councillor Wright?
But other funding sources, and really best wishes in order to secure more funding.
Thank you for support as well. Thank you.
No other group leaders? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tara Jalepi?
Honourable members of Bath Council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Tara Gelpy. I am a survivor of domestic abuse, and I also work for Voices. I'm here to share my story, to express my deep gratitude for the support I received from Voices, and to raise an urgent concern. Voices service provision could be at risk due to lack of financial support, and it is simply unacceptable that our council still has not supported this essential service that so many individuals and services refer into. When I first reached out to Voices, I was broken, overwhelmed by trauma and unsure of how to move forward. Voices gave me more than just help. They gave me a lifeline. Through their Freedom Programme and Recovery Toolkit group work, coupled with professional, trauma-informed counselling, I was able to start a long journey for my healing. These services work and were crucial not only to my recovery, but to the recovery of many others in our community who are survivors of domestic abuse and the health of our community. However, Voices now is in a precarious position. Despite the incredible impact they have had on survivors like me, the organisation is facing an uncertain future. It is now time for this council to take the responsibility to their constituency to ensure that Voices, a service that has been providing crucial life-saving support for years, continues to do so long-term. If this is not addressed, many survivors will be without a guaranteed source of help. If Voices were to close, countless survivors would lose access to this resource that have helped them rebuild their lives and, in turn, their families. The cost of domestic abuse to our public services is staggering, from healthcare to housing and law enforcement. By investing in Voices, the Council could not only save the lives, but also reduce long-term costs to the public purse. The need for a free or subsidised safe space for Voices to continue its vital work is urgent. Without it, many survivors will be left without the support they need to recover and move forward. I urge the Council to act now. Financially supporting Voices is not just a moral responsibility, it is an investment in long-term well-being of our community and a chance to break the cycle of abuse. Thank you for your time and for your consideration and considering the needs of survivors in our community.
Thank you, Tara. Any group leaders wish to ask a factual question? Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much for your statement, Tara. I'm just trying to put this in the right way. What would have happened to you if Lifeline and Voices had not been in place to support you?
I think I'd probably be in another abusive relationship because I had no understanding of what I'd been through. I didn't know it was abusive. I'd been told that it was my fault. That was one of the main things that Voices helped me with, is made me understand the cycle of abuse, which is profound. Thank you. Yeah.
Does any other group leaders wish to ask a factual question? Thank you, Tara, and I'm sure this is quite emotional for you to come and make that statement. Thank you. Emily Dean.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Emily Dean. I'm CEO of Voices. Voices, as you've heard, is a small Bath-based grassroots organisation providing domestic abuse survivors prevention and recovery support, founded 10 years ago by 4 survivors of domestic abuse who recognised that while support exists for those in crisis, there was a significant gap. No one was prioritising recovery or that of their children. A decade on, and we continue to be led by the voices of lived experience, working to support survivors of abuse not just to recover, but to thrive. Our outcomes measures consistently demonstrate the profound impact of our work. 85% of our clients feel more capable of recognising abusive behaviour as a result of our support. 91% gain a deeper understanding of the impact of abuse on children, thereby breaking the cycle of abuse for future generations. 81% of clients report improved health and well-being, underscoring the effectiveness of our holistic approach to recovery. And 85% express an increased understanding of trauma and know how to manage their symptoms. Nationally, there's a cost of living crisis. Grants and trusts are closing down or changing parameters. And as we move into a new financial year, Voices is facing its toughest year to date, with many of our existing funding sources set to end in March. At the same time, year on year, we see an increase in our referral numbers, and the demand on our service consistently outweighs capacity. This is only set to rise, with the news that yet another wonderful local charity providing trauma-informed support in Bath closes next month as a result of lack of funding. The financial costs of domestic abuse are stark. It costs the UK £66 billion per annum, and research by the government indicates that the average cost of domestic abuse per individual victim is £34,215. Without preventative and recovery services, these costs will only increase. We know that for every pound spent on victim services, that represents a £9 saving to the public purse. Put simply, it is a false economy to not fund domestic abuse support, and yet we receive no support from the Council. Today, therefore, I'm asking you to change this. Can the Council provide financial support to Voices? And if you can't, and I understand you're pressed like everyone, I urge you to consider helping us in alternative ways. Can you help us with a fundraising drive? Can you share our communications? Can you offer infrastructure and a safe space to deliver our services? Please support Voices. Help us continue to keep delivering trauma-informed specialist services for victims and survivors across Baines. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Any group leaders wishes to? Councillor Guy.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your statement. It seems to be clear that there's, you've had a set bit of funding that seems to be coming to an end at March. So would you be willing to meet the Cabinet member just to discuss that in detail and see how we can help with that? Because it's obviously providing a vital service, but we need to know more about the detail of your financial situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Be very happy to. I would just say that there are a number of grants and trusts that are closing, so funders that we've had for years are literally closing down. But love to meet you. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you for your statement. In the again, how best to put this? What is the impact for young people of the work that you do in the long term?
So whilst we work primarily with adults, a lot of our work is around parenting, and we support parents to support their children to address trauma. Research shows that children who grow up in domestically abusive relationships are far more likely to become involved in abusive relationships. Indeed, one bit of research showed that boys that grow up in that relationship are 80% more likely to become a perpetrator in the future. So the work we do is supporting them to understand healthier relationships. We also offer training to professionals and to schools.
Councillor Ross, did you want to throw your question? Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Anyway, you see, I'm throwing my weight around again. At 5 a.m. this morning, I was in A&E at the RUH, and two policemen brought in a woman who looked like she'd been the victim of domestic violence. How would your organisation engage with somebody in that situation? I mean, what would be the ideal pathway from initial medical help?
Absolutely ideal pathway is for the RUH to have a hospital IDVA. My understanding is funding for the hospital IDVA was closed some time ago. Many other hospitals sustain one. An IDVA is an independent domestic violence advisor, and they then refer into the IDVA service at Southside, who we work in partnership with, and Southside will then refer to us to support them with long-term recovery support.
Thank you, Emily, for your statement.
Thank you very much.
Karen Jones. Okay, we'll move on. Grace Wiltshire, please.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Grace Wiltshire. I want to talk about refugees in Bath, particularly Palestinian refugees, and to ask what the Council is doing to support them. I've been a volunteer with Bath Welcomes Refugees for the past 10 years. BWR, as some of you will know, works with refugees from Syria, Afghanistan and Ukraine in the main. Through this experience, I've seen firsthand the challenges refugees face when trying to rebuild their lives in a new country. It's been an eye-opening and rewarding experience. I want to emphasise that I'm speaking here tonight totally in a personal capacity and not on behalf of Bath Workmen's Refugees. Bath Workmen's Refugees is a charity which helps with housing, furnishing homes and providing resettlement and befriending services. They also offer vital support in areas such as English lessons, navigating benefits, finances and accessing healthcare, as well as running social groups, gardening projects and homework support. I'm proud to be part of a city that provides such comprehensive support to those in need. However, while the UK has rightfully welcomed nearly 250,000 Ukrainian refugees, the response to Palestinian refugees has been different. Most Palestinians do not want to leave their homeland, but due to generations of displacement and ongoing conflict, many have no choice but to flee. Unfortunately, the UK asylum system is difficult to navigate and there's no specific resettlement programme for Palestinians. This leaves many in limbo, struggling to reunite with their families and access the services they need to rebuild their lives. The UK has a long history of offering sanctuary to those fleeing war and persecution, and I believe the same principles should be extended to the Palestinians. With that in mind, I have two important questions for the Council regarding local refugee support. Firstly, at the last Council meeting, which I watched online, the Council were informed of the appointment of a refugee officer. Can you provide more details of their role and how they plan to address the needs of refugees, including Palestinian refugees? And secondly, could the Council give a report about how it supports refugees to resettle in the area, as it feels important to have that information in the public domain? Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Any group leaders wish to speak? Factual question? No? No. Thank you very much, Grace, for your statement. Jess Collier, please.
Thank you for having me. I am here today as a resident of Beckford Road regarding Councillor Mark Elliott's single decision to permanently close Sydney Road, Sydney Place, otherwise known as A36 South. Beckford Road, similar to A36 South, has numerous residential properties, but unlike the A36 South, Beckford Road also has a cycle lane, a bus stop, the entrance to Bathwick Estate, the entrance to Sydney Gardens, and the road used to access the local primary school. Now, because of the closure of this road, residents, cyclists, pedestrians and school children and bus passengers are now faced with a 40% increase in traffic. That's 10,000 plus cars every single day. Beckford Road is simply not built to accommodate this vast amount of traffic. So now what we see is congestion, local buses stuck in traffic, emergency services stuck in traffic, cyclists dangerously navigating around traffic, near misses, actual collisions, drivers sounding their horns, drivers shouting, swearing, and vehicles now sitting on yellow boxes preventing pedestrians from safely crossing the road, which I encountered walking to this very meeting this evening. All of this is happening whilst A36 South residents brag to the local media that they are enjoying hearing birdsong. It was fine, I kept saying to myself during the trial, because the Council would surely read the findings of the report that they themselves have commissioned and make the right decision to undo what they have created, which is an unlivable neighbourhood. On the 7th of February, the final report was published, and I simply cannot understand how this Council can claim this a success. The findings show the scheme has had a detrimental negative impact to hundreds of residents, local businesses, local primary school, creating an unsafe environment. Local primary school head teachers strongly opposed the scheme, noting how dangerous drop-off and pick-up times are now less safe for those walking to school. Parents have commented that cycling and walking to school with my children are a far more dangerous experience. The Holborn Museum have opposed the scheme, noting the increase in congestion, deterring museum visitors. Of the 1,889 replies to the consultation, the vast majority, 76%, opposed. Overall vehicle numbers have not changed. Traffic has simply been displaced to nearby streets. I am at a loss as to what motive this Council has to force this through, when it's so abundantly clear that you have created an unsafe environment that residents do not want. Does this Council simply not care as it's not impacting you personally? If you do in fact care about this city, its residents, then please do the right thing, like you have done with Camden Road Busgate. Listen to us, keep us safe, don't make a mockery of this city, wasting public funds. Reverse this decision.
Thank you, Jess. Can any group leader indicate if they have a factual question, please? Councillor Wright.
How many children attend the local school, the primary school?
Not sure, I am not a parent, school governor or school teacher.
Thank you.
Any other group leaders? No? Thank you very much. Thank you, Jess. So, lastly, David Wedgwell.
Do you want to just use this?
Thank you very much, David Edgewell, South West Transport Network, but also the passenger representative from the West of England Mayoral Combined Authority and North Somerset Bus Advisory Panel. So, for the first time in 5 years, we've actually seen some progress on the transport levy, on the two union authorities and North Somerset putting some extra money in. We've still got a long way to go on improving the bus network. It's good to see that we've put a Sunday service back on the Service 8 in Bath, and we're also extending the park and ride services with or without the dog in the evenings in Bath. We've still got a lot to do, and today I've been with DFT on the Integrated Transport Conference in Bristol. Amanda, very interesting. But I was being lobbied all day by passionate groups in the West of England Mayoral Combined Authority of the City region about the community transport network, including Keynsham. They're very concerned at the moment because, as we haven't passported money to the West of England Mayoral Combined Authority and Mayor Norris, there is some difficulty in maintaining the community transport network. We need to sort this, and by that I say Kevin to Bain, South Gloucestershire, Bristol and North Somerset. Community transport is very important in rural areas. It's very important where we don't have mainline buses. It's very important as we probably begin to withdraw or reduce the reliance on Westlink. Yes, there isn't going to be the money to pay for Westlink, not £30 million again. So I'd ask the Council urgently to look at the community transport issues, speak to the Keynsham and the other groups via the West England Combined Authority, because I understand they are responsible for their financing, and to make sure we maintain. Some of the staff may have to leave if we don't find a solution. So it's a serious situation, and the only way we can pay for things in WECA is obviously through the transport levy or through any block grant, and we got about 17 million this year included North Somerset's allocation, which is not bad, but it's average southwest really. There's no extra money into West of England because we're a city region for buses. So I'd urge basically that we look at this. On the issue of bus priority, others are speaking against it. I'll just make the point that we can't move buses to Radstock, Midsummer Norton, Poulton, where I'm also getting lobby. And I had the whole 2 days of it when the passengers moved the bus stops in Midsummer Norton, and I spoke to Zero and WECA. But we need bus lanes, we need bus priorities. Buses can't move through jams, and that is a crucial thing, whether it's in the city, whether that is in the rural parts of Bath and North East Somerset and Somerset, or whether that is in the city itself. We need bus gates, we need bus lanes, we need priority measures. And that is part of what we're given the city regions finance for. It was actually for that. So it can't be spent on other highway schemes, it's got to be spent on public transport, walking and cycling. Otherwise the DFT will take it away from us. And finally, And finally on Metro West, whilst we've cancelled, and I was part of this decision, cancelled Keynsham bypass proposals for the bus lanes, and I did see Kevin's petition being organised. We are, by the way, pushing ahead and trying to push ahead with both St Anne's and Salford railway stations, and also talking to Wiltshire about that particular rail corridor. So we need to push ahead with that. That may be an alternative between Bristol and Bath and for Salford and the residents in that particular corridor. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Can I have group leaders indicate to wish to speak? Councillor Moss, did you want to defer your question?
No, it was no question. It was just need to say good to see you, David, and welcome back.
Councillor Moss, I think Eleanor would like to ask a question. I thought you
I was
spoke
wanting to ask Mr Redgwell a very fundamental question. Does he not think it would be a good idea if the real-time timetables bore some resemblance to what is actually coming up the road?
I have to agree with that. We have a lot of glitches in the contract for the real-time information, which again is controlled by the West Midlands Combined Authority. But both in the rail system and the bus system, we do get what they call ghost buses, and it's still got to be sorted out. We change contractors, and we still have ghost buses in the network. So it does fundamentally need to be, whether you're in Radstock, Midsummer, Norton, Peasdown, parts of Bath or in Pensford, it does need to be sorted out. We're in South Gloss or North Somerset or Bristol.
Thank you, David. Any other group leaders have a factual question? And I'm going to penalise the Labour Party. You can't have another question later, all right? Because Eleanor's taken the second one.
Don't blame me, Chair.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Right, thank you, David. So we're going to move on to item 8, budget and council tax. To remind councillors that any amendments to the budget proposal will only be considered after the speeches from the Cabinet members, group leaders and the PDS. May I invite Councillor Guy to move that according to Rule 3.1.14, suspension of rules, Rule 3.33 be suspended to allow the length of speeches for the budget debate. Councillor Guy.
Chair, I was going to read out the suspension, but you read it for me, so I move.
And do I have a seconder? Second. Thank you, Councillor Moss. So we're going to move now to item B of 8, to invite Councillor Mark Elliott to present the budget recommendation by the Cabinet to the formally move adoption of the recommendations in the report and Annex 13 that has been circulated. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. As I've said at corporate
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise. We have to vote on the suspension. It doesn't say this here, but... Yes. Right, are we all agreed to suspend so that group leaders have 5 minutes and secretaries have 3? Basically, that's what it means.
If it's easier, stick your hands up just on this one. Thank you. Yes, good.
Right, we'll move on. Councillor Elliott. Elliott has 10, actually.
10,
sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. As I've said to corporate PDS and to Cabinet as the budget's progressed through various committees, the major underlying theme of the budget this year is uncertainty. Whilst it's a huge relief to be away from the chaos of a collapsing Tory regime of the previous few financial years, the Labour government has been slow to signal the kind of significant reform that will be required if local government is to move out of crisis mode. We've been promised multi-year settlements. That's absolutely vital because it allows us to plan, but that's not yet forthcoming. We were told that the cost to local government of the employer's national insurance increase would be fully funded, but we will in fact only see about 50% of our direct costs funded and none of our indirect costs. Those indirect cost increases from third-party care providers, for example, are likely to be quite significant. As I hope all members will be aware, we've made successful bids for a new special school and new alternative provision school on the old Culverhay site, but we're still waiting for central government to confirm when they will release the funding for construction, and the more that's delayed, the longer we will have to bear the costs of sending children out of area. The fact that the government has announced a review into social care, but that they're only planning to complete that review in 2028, shows a woeful lack of understanding as to the urgency of the issue facing local authorities with social care funding. Add on top of that the level of global uncertainty we're now seeing introduced by the complete upending of post-Second World War consensus on the importance of an alliance between Western countries and the move fast and break things approach of the Trump White House, and it's extremely difficult to predict how things will play out financially over the next 12 months. Members will remember that last year we actually set a 2-year balanced budget proposal. By the time we were reviewing the medium-term financial strategy back in September, we could start to see some of the emerging pressures which were challenging the second year of that 2-year balanced position. If all things had remained as expected, this coming year's budget would have involved no change at all. Obviously, we expected some movement. but the level of pressure was again pretty extreme, particularly in children's services. Rather than being in a nice, comfortable, balanced position, the starting point for our 25-26 budget round was a 14 million shortfall. So the work over the last 5 or 6 months has been to identify savings and income proposals to bridge that gap. The proposal before Council today closes that 14 million gap with £6.7 million of income generation plans and 7.31 million in savings. The detail of those is articulated in Annex 2.1 of the papers. That gives us an overall net revenue budget of £151.71 million. The scale of pressure we've seen during this financial year has been very significant and very unpredictable, so this pressure needs to be reflected in next year's budget proposal. As I've been reporting to Cabinet and corporate PDS throughout the year, that's particularly true in children's services. The market of providers of social care, particularly for those children with the greatest need, is truly broken. What I think all members need to understand is that we're operating in an environment where providers can demand very significant hundreds of thousands of pounds a year for each care package for our most vulnerable children. That means you don't need many children to come into the system at that level unexpectedly for the budget to be thrown completely out of kilter. However, I'm proud of the fact that this administration cares deeply about social care, and the budget proposal you have in front of you involves a net increase of around £6.5 million in funding for social care. That's on top of previous years' very significant increases. In fact, the last 5 years have seen an increase of around 45% in our children's services funding. The increase in demand, the broken markets and the lack of central government action are not the fault of those individual people, adults and children, who so desperately need that care. So we will always make sure that the funding is in place to be able to meet their needs. On top of that increase in funding for social care and recognising the level of risk and uncertainty in the budget this year, we're also holding significant contingency and provision budgets to help mitigate against the risk of things not going to plan. So on top of the usual £3 million of corporate contingency, we're also holding £2.6 million in contract inflation provision to mitigate against the previous risk I mentioned of the unfunded employers' national insurance rise, and the risk that that places on our contracts with external providers. We're holding a further £4.3 million high-risk service demand and cost increase provision, essentially allowing a buffer against the sheer unpredictability of the situation in social care and, to a lesser extent, other departments across the Council. But despite this extremely unpredictable environment, we have managed to carve out some room for increases in funding to areas we set out as our priorities in our manifesto back in 2023, and which have now been articulated in the Council's corporate plan. We've managed to add 2 new teams to our Clean and Green initiative, giving the Council more capability to tackle weeds, graffiti and litter. We're investing in our waste and recycling fleet, replacing them with electric vehicles over the next few years, which can be charged from the electricity generated from the solar panels on our new recycling centre in Keynsham, helping us meet our net zero carbon commitments. We're trialling 3 new school street schemes, making it easier and safer for children to walk to school. We're putting extra money into building new pedestrian crossings and resurfacing pavements. This is on top of the very significant budget already in place for road resurfacing and pothole fixing. We're trialling extended park and ride hours, supporting the nighttime economy by giving both visitors and staff the option of evening bus travel into the city. I'm sure colleagues will be highlighting these and other items in their own speeches, but I want to spend a bit of time on a couple of really exciting things directly within my own resources portfolio. The first is that we're investing in a brand new customer contact system. It will replace our ageing telephone, email and social media messaging systems with a single platform so that when people contact the Council, our response will be more joined up and coordinated. Currently, there are something over 60 phone numbers alone on which residents can phone various functions of the Council. From this year, there will be 1 number, and if someone contacts us initially via the website or via email and then rings us up, the Council officer they're talking to will have access to a single customer record with all of the details of previous contact. The way the Council interacts with and responds to residents is absolutely key to improving our service to them, and residents should see significant improvements as this new system rolls out over the coming year. And the other area I want to highlight from the resources portfolio is the rollout of some AI tools. There is a temptation in some circles, I think, to see AI as just a gimmick. And it's certainly true that we're only in the early stages of the changes we're going to see as the AI technologies mature. But by using carefully targeted tools, we're already seeing huge benefits from relatively small investments in this technology. Our social care teams have been using a tool for helping with the creation of case notes and care assessments and supervision notes, and the feedback has been startling. One member of the children's social care team reported a 75% reduction in admin time, saying, "For the first time ever, I announced to my team that I am waiting for the next assessment to come in." A member of the adult social care team commented, "It has made all written work significantly easier. It has saved me so much time and made my practice significantly more efficient," while estimating they were saving 10 hours a week. So our investment in AI is about helping our staff to be more efficient, reducing admin, allowing them more time to serve our residents. And this budget makes room for us to continue with these carefully targeted uses of that technology. I'm sure they won't all be as immediately successful as the social care tool has been, but we need to give ourselves room to trial innovative solutions and embed the ones that do work, because when they work, the benefits can be huge. Every budget tells a story. It's a representation of this administration's priorities. In this case, what you're seeing is an administration that is setting out a prudent, careful, balanced budget which protects the most vulnerable in our communities and tries to mitigate against the huge unpredictability and uncertainty we face, but at the same time manages, despite the prevailing uncertainty, to make some important moves in meeting our manifesto commitments. I want to emphasise that many councils and residents of other authorities would be extremely envious of our position. We have healthy reserves. We are not at any significant risk of finding ourselves in financial difficulty. We're not, as other councils are, unable to balance the books or making swinging cuts to services. We're not having to apply for central government for permission to make exceptional council tax rises. In fact, after this budget, I think we will move from having the 4th lowest council tax of all the unitary authorities in the South West to having the 3rd lowest. One only has to look slightly west to Bristol, where a Green-led administration has mooted cuts to libraries, museums, bin collections, lollipop people and the council tax reduction scheme. That's not happening here. We are maintaining a well-run, well-managed, stable organisation, and I'm proud of what we're achieving, despite the prevailing uncertainty. So I'm very pleased to present to Council a prudent, balanced budget proposal, which helps deliver on the Council's core purpose of improving people's lives. And I move the recommendations set out in section 2.1 to 2.4 of the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Elliott. May I invite Councillor Paul May to second that recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. I wish to second the Liberal Democrat proposed budget for 25-26. Every year, local authorities have to set a balanced budget, and the Council's Section 151 officer, finance officer, has a legal duty to certify that. We are proposing a budget that meets that duty, plus and service improvements that the electorate voted for in our ambitious Liberal Democrat manifesto in 2023. We set out a strategic plan following the last election, which is monitored publicly, and we are accountable to our residents for its delivery. This budget protects our public services and our financial accountability. The enormous pressures on social care are not unique. Nationally, we've seen other local authorities failing to cope. Indeed, some have declared themselves bankrupt via what is known as a Section 114 notice. Others have threatened that, and others have been forced into a position where they have to ask the government for permission to raise council tax beyond the usual 5% cap, placing additional finance burden on their residents. As the Cabinet Member for Children's Services, our social care pressures over 2 years have been supported by our Liberal Democrat administration with budget increases from 33 million to 41 million. This is real support because we know that any child who comes into care will be affected with lower life chances. These are the most vulnerable people within BAMES and desperately need our continuing care. However well we look after them, it will affect them for the rest of their lives. Our mitigations, such as with the Charlton House, new local care homes, the proposed free school and AP at Culverhay, are examples of how we are bringing services back in-house to reduce our current vulnerability to suppliers making excessive profits. I'm proud that this budget, with the dedication of our children's services officers, will mean we are doing everything that we can. I value my Cabinet colleagues who have supported this pressure so fully. Our residents quite rightly expect us to manage and lead over our council finances. I mentioned children's services professionals, but the whole council have an excellent team of officers, and this budget this evening is reassuring proof we are prudent and ambitious for the community. Councillor security has always taken place over all of these revenue and capital budgets. I make no apology coming at this from a caring background. The finances for adult and children are a large part of the budget, and I'm proud of the way our Liberal Democrat administration have committed and demonstrated their care. Sound finances are essential.
Bring your statement to a close, please, Councillor May.
Okay, but this evening, please remember that the impact of this budget has direct implications on real people's lives for the most vulnerable in our community. I second the Liberal Democrat proposed budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor May. May I invite Councillor Moss to make a statement as the Chair of the Corporate PDS panel, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. It will be a brief statement, as unfortunately at the joint scrutiny panel I was absent at a funeral. Councillor Treby, I think, was chairing that meeting. I don't think he's not here. So I have taken some notes from the minutes, and I'm sure there are members of the panel who will correct me if I'm wrong with those. First of all, the Chair of Children, Adults and Wellbeing, PDS, did comment about the lack and lateness of information, in part, she said, from central government, but also commented about the similarity to some of the proposals from last year. The Chair of the Climate Emergency and Sustainability panel particularly focused on the lack of capital investment information actually within the budget process. There were other comments from panel members around, particularly around children's services, about bringing services back in-house, problems with the home-to-school transport system, and whether or not a 3% increase to the budget is actually achievable within the context of current pressures. There was also some comments about how the budget proposals needed to be presented within a 5-year projection and actually put them into context with other budget proposals. So as I say, that is a brief summary of what I've gleaned from notes. And I'm sure that if any other panel members do want to add to those, they can do so within the, happy for them to do so, within the main budget debate.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. And may I ask you to make a statement on behalf of the Labour Party, please?
Thank you very much. And I've gone from hopefully cheerful and helpful mode into possibly less so. Because I have to say, looking at the current budget proposals, there is a real sense of déjà vu. And I appreciate the comments that were made about we're living in a very changing world in the White House and in Westminster, and the effect that has had on how to prepare local government finance. But I have to say that what we're seeing in these budget proposals, I have to say, is more of the same. And the last year was part of the 2-year budget cycle, but we've got some comments within there and some of the commentary within there that talks about needs are met in a cost-effective way, and that's this year. And last year, matching user needs in an affordable way, both last year and this year, remodelling service delivery, and of course the potential consequences for this year, talking about not impacting negatively on service delivery, and that's within the budget commentary for this year. And does occur to me that Einstein commented about the wisdom of repeating the same actions and expecting a different outcome. And I mean polite in the way I put that. Because a budget is proposing actions, and what will those consequences be? And what we saw in last year's proposals, how did that turn out throughout the year? And the initial way to look at it, of course, is at quarterly returns. And what we saw consistently was that there was overspend quarter by quarter by quarter, particularly around social care. And I appreciate that this is not just Baines, it is across the country. But the lack of an ability to actually predict those pressures is disappointing. The lack of any commentary about what work we're doing with other local authorities in a similar position to try to learn lessons is lacking, and I particularly reference home-to-school transport in that, which has been a particular issue and I understand is a bit of an outlier within Bath and North East Somerset compared to other local authorities. Surely we need to learn with that. So I guess that the position the Labour Group was doing was, what is the difference this year to last? And what confidence can we have that repeating the same actions will result in a different outcome? Surely, looking at these proposals, that it is very likely we will see precisely the same quarterly returns, the same problems, where, particularly in departments that made budget proposals that they were able to achieve, and then were asked later on in the year, you need to make more savings because there are parts of the council, parts of the budget that are not performing. So we also need to talk about consultation. We also need to talk about detail. And while we recognise Angie Rayner's frequent announcements about multi-year settlements, we know that we need to go further, that we need to see a consultation mechanism embedded into our own constitution, because the lack of detail has been a criticism for a number of years. But the problem is wider than that as well, of course, because some of the consequences of budget is how decisions are made and where they are made. And we've seen a number of instances in the year, looking at a local respite home, where a closing notice came in January 24 and wasn't announced even to politicians until December 24. We see a partnership procurement process where £35 million is going over 7 years to a private company with no scrutiny, and presumably the Cabinet wasn't even told about that. I'm afraid overall, the Labour Group can have no confidence, unfortunately, that these budget proposals are going to make any different outcome to the previous year, so we will not be supporting them.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. May I invite Councillor Sean Hughes to make a statement on behalf of the Independent Group?
As you knew.
Thank you. Firstly, it's important to recognise that a significant proportion of the budget is allocated to children and adult social care, an area that remains extremely challenging for all councils across the UK. The Independent Group fully supports the budget proposals in this regard. However, I want to highlight a concern regarding scrutiny. We believe that this is an area where improvements can be made, especially since scrutiny is a constructive process that helps identify potential unintended consequences. Currently, the use of proportionality on panels limits the depth of scrutiny that can be applied. For instance, 2 weeks ago I observed the Corporate PDS Committee reviewing the budget proposals. In the chamber were 9 senior council officers, 12 Liberal Democrats councillors, just 1 opposition councillor. This creates the impression that the council is effectively marking its own homework. Another issue lies with the lack of context with the data provided. Understanding the year-on-year progression often requires extensive independent research. especially as budget lines are frequently moved or removed, making it difficult to track performance or justify increases or cuts. A simple example of this would be Midsummer Norton parking charges. The budget showed a clear target of raising £195,000 this year, which is yet to be achieved. However, the budget line has now disappeared. If the £195,000 wasn't raised, how was this shortfall offset, and how much revenue is projected for the next year? There's a similar challenge with understanding the £802,000 cuts to the third sector reflected in last February's budget. It would be beneficial to see a clear flow from one budget year to the next, including the percentage of targets achieved and whether it's over or under budget, to be able to track financial trajectories and ensure accountability. At a time where some councils are considering increases of up to 10%, we are fortunate to be able to limit the rise to 4.99%. However, it's important to recognise that this figure doesn't account for the additional charges such as parking permits, green bin collections. For many residents, the actual increase will be higher, adding to the significant financial pressures they are already facing. There are also other areas that we require some clarification, particularly around capital expenditure. These include 5 to 10 million allocated for upgrading the heating systems in corporate buildings, £10 million uplift for replacing council vehicle fleets, and an uplift of £6.5 million to £20 million for the Fashion Museum that historically has operated at a £500,000 annual loss. So, in summary, while there is much within this budget to support, there are also areas of concern, most notably the ongoing challenges to ensuring effective scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Wright, on behalf of the Green Party.
Thank you. Thank you to the hard-working officers for overseeing this budget. Clearly, this BAME's budget is impacted by local and national political decisions. Labour campaigned on the promise of a better future, yet the Labour government, like the Conservatives, have failed in properly funding local councils. The recent changes to national insurance rates have created extra costs within local council budgets at the worst possible time, forcing essential services to be slashed. While national funding issues are a significant part of the problem, the Labour government's failure to provide real support has worsened the situation for local councils, putting essential services and our most vulnerable at risk. The Labour government has yet to demonstrate bold leadership needed to build a better future. Instead of tackling difficult decisions like adult social care, they continue to prioritise corporate interests, refusing to challenge the status quo. If they don't act decisively, we risk seeing our country fall under the control of right-wing populism, offering change that will not be inclusive or fair for everyone. The Liberal Democrat budget, which claims to improve people's lives in BAMES, is not much better. We're deeply disappointed by the lack of vision for BAMES. The budget offers piecemeal measures and short-term fixes that fail to address the long-term challenges facing our residents. It is particularly concerning to see that at a time when the administration has cut adult social care impacted children's services and left the third sector on its knees, the Council's reserves have grown from £85.1 million to £86.9 million. Meanwhile, critical services delivered by charities will no longer be funded, pushing the poorest to have even less. There is no clear plan for improving adult and children's care, developing public transport, creating livable neighbourhoods, or ensuring sustainable development. Without a comprehensive strategy, we'll continue to see ad hoc, unsustainable quick fixes instead of durable solutions. These approaches nationally and regionally fuel dangerous right-wing populism. WECA is the only real opportunity available to deliver a strategic vision for change. This Council needs to understand that we are WECA and to fully cooperate with WECA to move out of special measures and in return secure adequate funds for BAMES and deliver strategic change. This responsibility lies with our administration. There needs to be a positive outlook rather than selfish, isolated responses. WECA has been underfunded and ineffective in delivering the necessary investment, partly due to its best value notice. This lack of strategic planning, along with fragmented funding models, has left us struggling with inadequate services. This failure by the administration to provide clear, direct and invest in key areas is holding back BAMES and affecting those who most rely on essential services. For example, the Clean Air Zone revenue has not been utilised effectively. The funds raised should be reinvested into active travel and public transport to reduce emissions and improve mobility. Bristol has already demonstrated how this can work by using CAS revenue to fund new bus routes. BAMES should follow suit, but there is no plan or public money for how these funds will be spent or how they could improve public transport. This budget is political theatre. The lack of real leadership, both locally and nationally, is preventing BAMES from thriving. Our community deserves better. We are a long way short of improving people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. May I ask Councillor Tim Warren on behalf of the Conservative Party to make a statement, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Having set budgets in the past, I was feeling a bit bad about myself that I was going to have a go at the budget, but in all fairness, what I've just listened to reminds like a fairy story, to be honest with you. There's good intentions in this budget. However, there are a lot of savings cuts, call them what you like, but that's what they are. It's one thing sitting here and setting a budget, but it's actually another delivering it. And I feel that this present year now, I just read the other day that this year 77% of savings are forecast to be delivered in full, at least 23% not, which is a quarter, and we've nearly come to the end of the year then. If I paraphrase the explanation for the rest of savings, it's kind of, we'll get most of it somewhere else, not sure where, but we will, and I guess the rest we'll get from reserves. So actually, we've only really delivered 77%, so I've got a feel from Robin there that maybe it's not going to quite happen. But going on to the budgets in front of us, I haven't studied every line, as there's a lot more lines in there than I have time in the day, to be honest with you. So I'll just pick up a few things that jumped out and bit me. Commercial property. We're looking to raise another 200,000 for commercial property, which I think is a bit unambitious, even in the present climate. And when you look back, I think Jolly's has been a bit of a white elephant, so hopefully we'll get that right now. I think there's people coming, I'm not sure who, but I think we really need to look at commercial property in the future so we can get the best value from it. It's something I tried to do, but didn't quite happen. Another pressure that I'm a bit afraid could come and bite us over the next couple of years, I don't think it will this year, it's probably been judged, is homeschool transport. It is expensive, but you know, the Labour Party had a great idea to raise school fees by 20%, and I think that could put huge pressure on the state schools and consequently on the transport. Now, a lot of the people that may be in the private schools now live out in the country, and if you have to provide them to get to school as well, it could cause big issues. A couple of more concerning and frightening decisions: the review of care packages and the review of children's services. I've heard tonight that you're going to put extra money in, but what I read, and I must say this council has always been exemplary in children's services, and I think we should all be proud of where the council's been with that. We've won awards in the past and hopefully in the future, and first and foremost. But just reading the reports, it appears that we're very keen to take young people away from residential placements and move them towards reunification, which sounds great. However, I think that's happening around the country and has caused a few problems. And it's the fact that we're looking to look at all of the children. And if you put them back in a nice family environment, that's great. However, they would have been taken out of there for a reason, so I think we need to look really hard at that. Adult care as well. I read some of it, a lot of it appears to be looking to reduce it to the bare minimum. We have got pressures, exactly, but these are the words in the budget report. The recommendations were to review the Equality Impact Statement and carry out inclusive consultation. Now, I had a little bit of a deeper look into this, just pressed the button on the top, it took me into it. And it was all very well until you read a couple of questions. Are there any recent customer satisfaction surveys to refer to? No. Any engagement or consultation undertaken as part of the EIA? No. Are you planning to do any? No. And this just seems a little bit short-sighted that we're looking at equality impact assessments and we haven't really done it. So there are concerns with that. Buses. We want to encourage everyone to buses. I find this really. I mean, you did cut in the past all the subsidies to North East Somerset, so you can't really be taking that seriously. However, I'm going to say about WECA, I think it's an alternative view, actually, Joanne. I believe that this council and other councils have actually tried to work with WECA, and the big whole point has actually been in WECA, not with Bath and North East Somerset. So I'll stick up for that one for you. And another one, actually, Timbo, pat on the back. Just see you're encouraging, you're envisaging to make more money from recycling, which is great for everybody. Now it works in everything. So I think that's probably enough for now. I'm going to say a little about parking, but I'm going to save that for later. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Okay, so I want to draw attention to the Monitoring Officer's guidance on the budget setting process set out in item 8, Annex 9, for dealing with any budget amendments proposed at this meeting, and consider if they constitute a significant objection to the budget. The following amendments have been agreed by the statutory officers and taken in order, so the independent group, please, with your amendment. Councillor Hughes. Wakey.
Thank you. Okay, this is a very simple, straightforward amendment proposal. The budget report clearly identifies the risks of not implementing this activity. Delaying investments in a car park that now charges our residents risks further harming our local economy by discouraging trade and reducing footfall. Most important is the issue of safety. In July 2021, following the appalling tragedy of Sarah Everard, this council undertook a review into safety of women while using car parks and transport hubs, particularly at night. The subsequent motion agreed that this council undertook the following: calls on council departments and other bodies responsible for public space to improve the security of public spaces by encouraging them to review lighting in streets, car parks and parks, CCTV provision and other pertinent means to improve safety. However, it seems that yet again we are simply kicking the can down the road by delaying implementation for another year. With growing public concerns around safety, this issue demands a proactive and decisive approach. In summary, the report recognises the potential for damage and harm. However, acknowledgement alone is not enough. We want to see action taken to prevent it. Therefore, I move this amendment and genuinely hope all councillors will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Elliott and Councillor May, do you accept this amendment?
No.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this amendment? Councillor Tim Warren.
Yeah, thank you. Very happy to second this. We sat in that chamber and we tried to move a motion at our last council meeting, which was unfortunately turned down by all the Liberal Democrat councillors. I just don't understand where this is coming from. To start with, we're going to charge Mr Norton, Radstock, we're going to charge them car parking, but we'll do it all up with spending on the car parks. And now that's gone. So you're actually taking the money. And in your own report, you're lucky I can't find the page, but in your own report, it said it could cause harm to pregnant people, old people, and it says that. Because if you don't spend money on the car parks, the more dangerous place to be. And you say that yourselves, yet you won't accept the amendments. There's an extra 1.1 million you got from the government, which was unexpected this year, so that could go towards that. All the money that's been made on the car parks, which you said you would make money on the car parks, you're obviously not, so I don't know why we went to start with, really. So it's one of those things that you give in one hand and you take away double with the other hand, so I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. We're now going to debate the amendment. I have Councillor Dando for us to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Labour Group will be supporting this resolution, but we do it remembering that last year we moved an amendment to the budget which would have baked this into the budget on an ongoing basis, whereas today we're only being invited to add it back temporarily for 1 year. So I think it's regrettable that when that resolution came forward, not enough people supported it. In fact, I think the independent group didn't support it either, but there you go. But we will support this, and I hope that if the ruling group doesn't support it, then there is some recognition of the basic case within it that does suggest that if you are seeking to introduce charges, which you will be from next week, to those car parks, then you should spend some money on making them safe and secure for people who you are charging for the use of those car parks, and that there would be some other proposal coming forward to address some of those issues, because I would hate us to be in a position, all of us in this council, where someone was injured or worse, and someone then looked and said, why didn't you do something about it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jando. Do I have anybody else that wishes to talk on the amendment? That's a no. Can I then ask Councillor Elliott to reply on the debate on the amendment?
Yeah, if I understand the proposal correctly, and it's not completely clear, the suggestion is that we fund it by just slapping another 210k on the parking income revenue line, just up the parking income. The targets for the parking income are carefully negotiated over time with the parking services officers based on what they, in their professional opinion, believe is reasonably achievable. You can't just decide to add another 210k to that target. That simply adds another 210k of unfunded risk to a carefully balanced budget. The amendment quotes selectively from the Equalities Assessment, the job of which is to highlight all potential risks. It doesn't mean these things will happen. It also finishes in the Equalities Assessment by saying that schemes will progress where a clear case can be demonstrated and where resources exist, a line conveniently missed from the quoted sections in the amendment. I therefore urge members to vote against.
Councillor Warren.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask for a name vote?
Councillor Warren, we are taking a name vote at the very end, not at this point, okay? Thank you.
Name vote on the amendment, though.
So obviously we're going to go to the vote now, and your names will come up on the screen how you voted, so it is a name vote. So we're going to go to the vote on the amendment. Okay.
Green would vote for.
Has everybody voted that wishes to vote?
There you are. Try it. Right, now we're on. Now we're on. Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah. No, you're on it.
You can switch off your microphones now as well.
Do we have a result, Joe? Eleanor?
I ask when there was an equalities assessment of this voting system made, because I can't see the screen, I can't distinguish the colours, and I'm sure there are many other people in this chamber who have visual impairment and are disadvantaged.
We will make a note of
have
that,
an
of
assessment
your
done?
concerns.
That's what I'd like to know, please.
Yeah, we'll make a note of that, of your concerns. Thank you, Eleanor, for raising that.
Chair, I've brought this up with the Chief Executive on several occasions. This is a serious matter. I've written to you on this matter.
If I can ask the Chief Executive to note that. Thank you. Thank you. Right, we're going to move on now to the amendment from the Green Party. The announcement of the... Sorry, Joe. Do we have an announcement of the...
Yes, we do. I wrote that down. 15 against and 36 abstentions.
Again, so...
Abstentions.
That's 36 against, is that right?
Sorry, did I write?
He said abstentions.
There's a lot going on.
Against.
I agree.
Okay. 0 abstentions. I completely apologise. Sorry. I completely apologise. 36 against, 15 for, 0 abstentions. My apologies.
So the independent amendment has fallen. So we're now going to move on to the Green amendment. Thank you.
Okay, I'll read it out again. 15 for, 36 against, 0 abstentions. And all of the names will appear in the minutes against how you voted for this and the next one and the final vote.
Can I ask Councillor Wright to move her amendment, please?
Defer to Councillor Ross.
Thank you.
Thank you. Today, the Green Group is putting forward a set of budget amendments that aren't just ideas, but are practical, achievable solutions that will make a difference to our community. While we're presenting these amendments together as requested, we're happy for them to be considered individually. I'll cover a few of the proposals myself, and Councillor Helpers will talk through the rest. More information and specific details can be referenced in our budget amendment document. First of all, we're proposing to extend free bus travel for disabled residents before 9 a.m. Disabled people already face enough barriers to fully participating in daily life. Getting to work, medical appointments or education shouldn't be one of them. The current restrictions on free travel before 9 a.m. are a real problem. A similar scheme in Warwickshire showed how this simple change had a huge positive impact, with 22% of disabled pass holders benefiting and over 12,000 early morning journeys recorded in just 7 months. We believe extending the scheme here in Baines would cost just £40,000 a year and make a significant difference by improving access and reducing reliance on taxis and private cars. This is a straightforward change that will promote a more inclusive, accessible community. Next, we're proposing to explore how we can improve the provision of public toilets across the area. While they may not always be top of mind, public toilets are essential. Many of ours are outdated, inaccessible, or have been shut down altogether. This poses a problem for residents, tourists, and especially those with disabilities or young children. We're proposing £46,000 to commission a report that will assess how we can improve public toilet facilities in Baines. This can include upgrading existing toilets, installing new ones in high-traffic areas, and ensuring they're accessible to everyone. It's a sensible first step to improve the local environment and tourism, especially as Bath's visitor numbers continue to grow. Thirdly, we're calling for a dedicated part-time administrative role within the planning enforcement team. Currently, officers are overburdened with administrative tasks, which slows down their ability to enforce planning laws effectively. By creating this role, we'll speed up the process, improve response times, and make the planning process more transparent and efficient. This is a small change that will have a real impact on the team and on residents who need planning issues resolved quickly. These amendments are about making Baines a better place for everyone, and I ask all councillors to support these practical proposals, which will have a real positive impact on our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Elliott and Councillor May, do you accept this amendment?
No, we don't.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, did Chairman?
How many seconds do they have left?
Well,
we've got 3 minutes, so I think it was
22 seconds.
You've got 22 seconds.
The question was whether another one of you was going to carry on. We weren't sure if she...
You...
Okay, thank you.
Right. Do I have a seconder? Thank you.
You don't need a second.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And I'm happy to second these amendments. These proposals are all about improving life here in Bath and North East Somerset, making our area greener, safer and more accessible for everyone. First, I want to talk about school streets. These schemes go beyond just putting up a few signs. Limiting traffic during drop-off and pick-up times is a simple solution to create a safe and healthy environment for school children, parents and staff. Our proposal includes extra funding to design a further 3 school streets so that we can speed up the rollout of school streets across our area. With an expected underspend of the City Region's Sustainable Transport Settlement, we need to be ready to bid for further funding. Having failed at extra travel funding bids in the past, we cannot risk losing any further extra travel funding opportunities. School streets will help reduce congestion, improve air quality and make it safer for children to get to school, and creating much-needed child safety zones. Next, we're proposing to improve cycle parking and pedestrian facilities at the Bath Sports and Leisure Centre. If we want more people to cycle for short journeys, we need to provide safe, secure places to park bikes and trikes. That's why we want to enhance the existing cycle parking at the Leisure Centre. The Leisure Centre is located on top of a car park, which creates a hostile environment for hundreds of kids per day attending activities like swimming classes. Improving the provision for walking and cycling at the Leisure Centre will enable more people to arrive by walking, wheeling or cycling and therefore reduce car use. I also want to address the issue of residential parking zones. At a public meeting at New Royal Hall on 19 March 2024, the Cabinet Project Lead for Highways acknowledged the real impact of the Walcott RPZ has had on residents in Lambridge. It's clear that implementing an RPZ in either Lambridge or Grosvenor on its own would only make the current problems worse. Both areas have experienced significant increases in commuter and visitor parking since the Walcott RPZ was introduced. Because they are adjacent, it's only fair to address both areas together. Therefore, we're calling for an RPZ to be introduced in Lambridge alongside a similar one in Grosvenor. This will ensure that residents in both areas aren't unfairly impacted by parking spillover and will help manage the growing parking issues in a way that works for everyone. Finally, we're proposing to abolish paper parking permits for the 15 councillors that currently own them. We've raised this before and it's still something that needs to be addressed. Paper parking permits allow councillors to park freely across the district, but this isn't in line with our climate goals. Moving to the My Permit system, the same system that any other user of the car parks would use, will make parking more accountable, reduce misuse and demonstrate that we're leading by example. It's a simple but effective change, and doing this wouldn't cost us any money. These amendments tackle the issues that matter to our community. They're practical, achievable solutions that will make life better for everyone in Bath and North East Somerset. I urge all councillors to support these amendments, which will help create a greener, safer and more inclusive future for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Helgess. Councillor Rick... Oh, sorry. Yes, we're going to debate on the Green Amendment. Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to take a quick look at how it's proposed that these proposals would be funded. There are three sources of funding, none of which have gone through any PDS panel. I'm going to concentrate on one of them. In this amendment, the Green Group are proposing removal of most of the funding that we have put in for new safety traffic initiatives. Cameras which are intended to help tackle the speeding traffic that blights many of our local communities, and help enforce against moving vehicle offences like dangerous turns and illegal turning. This beggars belief. Earlier this financial year, as a council, we backed a motion about Vision Zero proposed by the Green Party Group. Since then, we've been asked repeatedly what tangible new actions we will be taking to make the aspiration of no injuries on the roads as near to achieved as possible. Officers always had safety at the forefront of their mind, but have now embedded safe systems approach into all our work to make it easier to see where our investments in safety are having the biggest impacts. In fact, Green Party nationally is that introducing and enforcing lower speed limits is vital to improving road safety. The experience of both Wales and London has shown that lowering speed has lowered incidents and actually leads to lowering of insurance payments for drivers as well. I have lots of links if anyone wants to see the actual evidence and data to back this up. This leads to changes in driver behaviour and emphasises the hierarchy of road users. We protect the most vulnerable most. I fought hard to get money in this challenging financial environment to put in proven road safety measures. These are very much wanted by our residents, they're backed by everyone in this council, and are evidence-based interventions to help protect the most vulnerable. I thank the office for their work on this. This amendment was brought forward without any conversation with myself, or, to the best of my knowledge, any highways officers. It proposes practically deleting a significant safety programme and replacing it with various suggestions, some of which may well have merit if tested against the competing priorities in the correct process, but which, as they stand this evening, are uncosted and untested. We cannot support this amendment, and I hope that in future the Green Group do not waste Council's time by not using the proper process for budget amendments and by failing to support our proven way of making our roads safer for all.
Thank you, Councillor Rigby. Councillor Dando?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think Councillor Rigby read my speech before I made it, so I'm not going to say some of the things that she said. Although I do agree, and the Labour Group is not going to be supporting this. I'll use the word hodgepodge of amendments because we are concerned that these entirely negate the unanimous agreement in November 23 of the Vision Zero motion, which the Council supported wholeheartedly, and at its heart had a number of the programmes which the Green Group now propose to delete in order to fund something else. And all the things in here, probably on their face, are things that the Council would want to explore, but in the correct way, through a scrutiny panel, through asking officers to bring reports, costings and viability studies, and then coming back to a budget setting process next year. But there are also issues which we are concerned around in some of the things that are not deleting things like speed indicator signs and the like. For example, and we've just had a conversation about it now, albeit we haven't reached a conclusion around it, but the Council has recognised concerns around utilising this fantastic voting system and the problems that that has for people with visual difficulties and who don't understand or cannot use technology. But then we propose a solution to that for people who cannot use my permit to have a paper permit and to recognise that they should not be abusing that permit, the proposal is to take it away. Without any idea about what that would mean for the 15 people, I don't know who the 15 people are, I'm not one of them, but there are clearly reasons why people would want to have a paper permit. And I think I might even have suggested this at the time, if there's any suggestion that there is abuse going on, which is kind of what's being hinted, then let's have an investigation of that. Let's name names, let's identify who the people are that are not using this system correctly, because nobody in this room would suggest that that's an acceptable way forward. But I'm afraid this set of proposals, as they stand at the moment, are unsupportable, and they would undo a lot of the good that we did in November when we unanimously agreed that resolution. So the Labour Group will not be voting for this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Dando. Does anybody else wish to speak on the Green Amendment? No? I'm going to ask Councillor Elliott to reply to the debate on the amendment, please.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we can't support the amendment. Some of the individual proposals may have some merit, but it's really just a random list of requests, as has been suggested. Many of the funding routes are not acceptable to us. As has been stated, we passed the Vision Zero motion originally proposed by the Greens, and this would remove things to help support that motion. I should point out that the extended free bus travel for disabled people before 9 AM portion of this is something that the Lib Dem MP for Froome East Somerset actually wrote to the Government Minister about last week, I believe. It's a national scheme, and that's where the funding should be coming from in order to make that scheme work earlier in the morning. And the Council of Parking Permits, again, I said last year, as Councillor Dando has repeated this evening, if you know of any abuse, please raise that. Let us know who is abusing it. You haven't done that in the last 12 months since it was raised last year, so I'm assuming you don't have evidence of that. Otherwise, you're just making baseless accusations, and I just find that a bit offensive. If they were serious proposals, they'd have been through the full budget process, including PDS panel reviews, and had equalities assessments performed. We're going to be voting on them en bloc, so I urge members to vote against.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. We're now going to move to the vote on the Green Amendment. Has everybody voted that wishes to vote? Joe, do we have a result?
We do, but the numbers... Yes. There's one vote missing. So there is one vote missing. Put your hand up if you haven't voted and you want to. You can't see your name, you're saying?
I can't see my name from here, so I don't know if it's recorded.
Okay.
It's Hansel.
It's not you, it's
No,
Duncan.
Duncan Hansel.
I can... Sorry. Yeah, okay, right, thank you. Yes.
No, he hasn't.
So 4-3 against 48, 0 abstentions.
Sorry, can you just repeat that, Joe?
Yeah, okay. Councillors voting in favour, 3, against 48, 0 abstentions.
So the Green Amendment has fallen, so we now move back to the substantive motion. Councillor Hurst.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to welcome these budget papers, as there's much to like. A sound, balanced budget, a well-run Lib Dem administration, a council with sound management of public funds, securing new investment in children and adult services. Lib Dem administrations get things done in spite of the austere winds that continue to blow from both Labour and previous Conservative central governments to local government. I'd like to highlight the following: the extra 50,000 funding for supported buses, an extra 50,000 for the car club in North East Somerset, an extra 87,000 to deliver the 3 school streets, the expert securing and delivering of 19 million of WECA funding for strategic transport schemes, and new income generation of 6.7 million. These are examples of how, step by step, this council is trying to improve transport choices for our residents, drive investment in good alternatives to the car, which will help improve the health and well-being and ability to move around the authority without being dependent on the car. I know this is a long-term approach, it can be hard, and we as a council need to be always improving our communication, showing the vision and continuing to be realistic on the trade-offs. We have seen people care passionately about the transport network. We continue to work hard to listen, to find the balances and compromises which help an authority to no longer bake in car dependency and continue to reduce through traffic blight to our residential neighbourhoods by keeping through traffic on through roads. For Odd Down, there is much good news. Councillor Hedges and myself are really pleased about the investment in Odd Down Sports Ground, 200,000, the investment in the Culver Hay site. Keeping education on this site has been a long-held Lib Dem policy with these 2 new schools. Improvements in the A36 corridor, 5.3 million, improving bus journeys, bus stops, new sections of bus lanes, transport hubs. Investment in open access youth services for Bath, urgently needed. Scholars Way, delivering the cycling and walking routes to get people to education sites. The improvements in the highways, including the Upper Bloomfield Road scheme. Extended park and ride services, improved security, continued investment in affordable housing and council housing. That's just to name a few. I was struck by some of the comments in the consultation paper, and in particular, the comment, "I want decent services and I'm struggling with cost of living." These comments chime with what we hear in our ward. So to summarise, time continues to be hard for local councils nationally and for our local residents. This budget shows the Lib Dem administration continues to deliver, continues to invest for residents in a very challenging financial climate, and I strongly support these budget proposals.
Thank you, Councillor Hurst. Before I move to the next speaker, can you just, those that want to speak, can you raise your hands again so I can make sure I've got you on the list? Because there's an awful lot of you. Names are gone. That's it. Yep, there. Sorry. I think I've got you all down. Wonderful. Oh, long list, right. So we're going to now go to Councillor Sarah Warren.
Well, I'll skip the bit where I say how disappointing it is that austerity is not over, but I'm pleased that due to excellent management of our money, we have nevertheless been able to fund some really exciting projects across my areas of responsibility, and I can't possibly do justice to all of them, but I'll mention some highlights. So firstly, we've allocated £50,000 revenue for the next 5 years to fund our Renewable Energy Development Manager, who will ensure there is a pipeline of projects ready to bid for capital funding in the quest for the Council to generate its own renewable energy towards our target of 12 megawatts by 2030, meeting our corporate energy demand. To date, the post holder has delivered 1.5 megawatts through rooftop solar projects and installed heat pumps to 2 Bath and North East Somerset care homes. So this is a really positive investment in our pathway to net zero. Looking to the future, we wait to hear whether a bid for heat pumps at Keynsham Civic Centre has been successful, and we're looking at feasibility of a possible hydroelectric project to replace the radial gate at Pulteney Weir, supporting decarbonisation of the Guildhall and pump rooms. We continue to investigate all other options, such as solar ports on our park and ride car parks, which have frustratingly not yet proven financially viable, but may yet do as prices and the regulatory environment change. Then when it comes to movement, we've already heard a little about school streets, which are concerned with our children's health. In these schemes, motor traffic is reduced around a school for the duration of school drop-off and pick-up, creating a safe, welcoming space for families to arrive and leave on foot and a healthy start to the day. We've been keen to create some for quite a while, and in the current year's budget, we previously allocated £200,000, which we have been using to liaise with schools and design schemes. And now, to enable us to get several on the ground during the coming financial year, we have allocated a further sum of £87,000. It's great that we'll be working with school communities to enable young people to get to school actively and healthily and reduce school-run traffic and air pollution at the same time. And that should put us in a good position to bid successfully for more in future. And then we've got the £19 million in the budget for strategic sustainable transport schemes, partly coming from the West of England Combined Authority, which includes £2 million of Clean Air Zone funding for the Scholars Way cycle route, connecting communities with educational establishments across the south of the city. Several other cycling and walking routes in Bath and Somer Valley links, which will improve infrastructure along key routes around North East Somerset. So all in all, a positive budget for climate of which we can be proud.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Councillor Paul May.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up a couple of things that were said earlier on today. Councillor Elliott and myself meet on a regular basis because of the pressures that have been on children's services to put proper scrutiny on what's happening in terms of that. One of the issues that's been raised twice, I think, this evening has been about home-to-school transport. The home-to-school transport is directly related to the legislation that applies for children, and under those circumstances we've had a review that the Chief Executive recommended, and we carried out a big scrutiny of home-to-school transport, and it highlighted that generally speaking we're better than other authorities, but there's two areas that are really outstanding. One is the fact that the distance of sufficiency, because we've got lots of properties outside of our area, those providers, they're a long distance away from the Baines area, and that's an extra over other areas because we don't have sufficiency in the local area, which is one of the reasons we discussed this evening. And the other was the over-reliance on taxis, which have become very expensive. So we're looking increasingly at getting in-house delivery of transport for patients. Legislation is well intended, and I think we should be proud of that, whether that's come from the Conservative, Labour or indeed Liberal Democrat. We're talking about vulnerable people. The other thing was reunification. When a child comes into care, they could potentially be under our care for 25 years. So when reunification is talked about, they also, when they get to that age, then they come out of the system. And the other thing is that we've got national recognition from the Labour government in the fact that we're now working with families around foster care to see whether we could, in actual fact, use foster carers in a different way, working with the community so that they can actually get children back into a supported environment moving forward. So just a couple of points there.
Thank you, Councillor May. Just to let you know, we've got another 12 speakers, so I'm going to draw a line at that, okay? So the next one is Councillor Romero.
Thank you very much, Chair. In light of the challenges this Council faces, I would like to start by congratulating Councillor Elliott and his officers for producing a balanced budget, which includes measures such as bringing services like home-to-school transport in-house, as outlined in Annex 2.1, and the use of AI in social services. I'm sure residents will appreciate that money can be set aside to deliver this administration's priorities, but I am not glad that council tax has had to rise to its highest permitted level. This situation is unlikely to change until a brave government seizes the nettle and finally funds social care centrally, rather than through a local tax that depends on how much your house was worth 20 plus years ago. Top-tier councils across the country face ever-increasing social service costs. This is due to increased demand with an ageing population and from an increase in demand of children with SEND or from more children coming into care. I am aware that Cabinet and officers have been relying on reducing costs by building a new alternative provision and specialist schools, yet we have still not had full commitment to that from the Labour government. This lack of commitment has consequences, such as high costs of and to other facilities. As Councillor Elliott mentioned, this adds to the cost from actual decisions taken nationally, which impact particularly on social care services, especially increases to employers' national insurance contributions. On a positive note, the Children and Adults Health and Wellbeing Policy Development and Scrutiny Panel will be conducting a deep dive into our early help and support offer so we can start to shape policy in this area. We hope that in supporting and strengthening families at this first opportunity, this will help prevent more costly firefighting interventions later on. And I welcome the support given by both Councillor May and Councillor Guy, as it is expected this will be a wide-ranging piece of work. This work is a direct result of the work the task group recently completed on knife crime prevention, where it became clear that early help and support for families is a key factor in that prevention. I will support the budget as set out before you, but urge those that have influence to use this with this government to A, get immediate matters resolved, such as the building of the new schools, B, to give us early insight into plans and proposals of changes in children's services and adult social care, and C, sort out social care funding. We really shouldn't have to wait until 2028 and Baroness Casey's report to finally stop funding social care from council tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Councillor Duncan Hansel.
Okay, sorry for the delay. The Lib Dem Baines budget gives a highways boost in Salford Ward. The A4 from near the Uplands Road junction to the Globe roundabout is scheduled for major resurfacing and reconstruction by Baines Council this summer at a cost of £755,000. Almost 20,000 square metres of road surface will be improved. Surface dressing is also planned for the A39 Wells Road between Corston and the Two-Headed Man Junction. Salford Ward will have the most highway repair and reconstruction of any ward in the Baines area. This was also true last year when Charlton Road was resurfaced. In addition, a central pedestrian refuge on Bath Road Hill in Salford is to be installed at a cost of £35,000 to facilitate safer crossings to the bus stops near the Glen and the Shallows junctions. The list is completed with 20-mile-an-hour speed limits being introduced in the rural sections or lanes of Manor Road and Courtney Road between Salford and Keynsham. I'm delighted with the continuing amount of investment in Salford Ward infrastructure. I'm especially pleased that a new central refuge will be installed on Bath Road Hill at the eastern end of the village. I've been making the case that this needs to be done. The busy A4 and the pavement parking make this part of Salford dangerous for pedestrians. Finally, I welcome the £80,000 set aside for repairs to the Wanstead culvert at Bathford Hill, Compton Dando. It would be astonishing if the newly elected unaligned councillor representing Salford Ward votes against this budget and against these measures when once again this administration is delivering for Salford Ward residents. I will be voting for this budget because I and the Lib Dem administration care about Salford Ward. Action, not words. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hansel. Councillor Dave Biddleston, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, if I may, just to talk about greater use of AI, which has come out in a couple of bits of discussion and the budget. So I worry that there may be a bit of a danger, not in the AI itself, but in the AI delegation of report reading and writing. And it might result in workers having less understanding themselves of the projects and cases that they're dealing with. the implication of social workers potentially not fully understanding their cases might have serious repercussions. Who then, I'd like to know, is monitoring the effect of AI on report writing by officers and counsellors, and monitoring what outcomes for those services that we provide?
Councillor Andy Waite.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to give a brief report on the Climate Emergency Scrutiny Panel. Climate emergency is everybody's responsibility, and I welcome the comments of Councillor Elliott earlier on, the number of green initiatives that have come about, and also welcome the comments by Sarah Warren as well. So we are living up to our climate emergency procedures, and we are making it front and centre of everything that we wish to achieve as a council. Now, the scrutiny panel is a small group of officers. We're small because we haven't been going very long, because we have only been a climate emergency panel for a relatively short time, and also we don't have any statutory powers that we need to do, and the money tends to be soaked up by other other priorities which we can't really get out of, essentially. So I'm sure we'd love to do a lot more than we're currently doing. I'm very grateful to the officers who really do punch above their weight and make a big effort to look at the ways, constructive ways of actually moving this green agenda along as far as we can. I'm very grateful to the Cabinet members who have turned up to talk about their particular bit. We've had 4 different Cabinet members this year come to talk about particular issues, including Tim for the wonderful work going on at the recycling centre in Keynsham. So very grateful for that. Very grateful for the members of the committee who come along and work in a collegiate way, because we're all essentially trying to improve the situation. It's a very positive experience to come in and discuss these issues. When it comes to policy, we have had a task and finish group looking at local management, local food growing. We've talked a lot about free school streets, not free schools, that's something else. And we were under the impression that there was only going to be 1 free school. That was the information we got last time. But we now understand that there are going to be 3 school streets available in Baines, and that's wonderful. I mean, the committee will be very, very positive about that, because, as I think the Green councillors over there have emphasised it, we all seem very keen to do this, and we are actually making it possible to do it despite all the real pressures on the budget. So I'm very grateful for the work that we're doing. I'm sure we will continue to do more, and we'll continue to punch further and further into this green agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. Councillor Anna Box.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and make this brief. I just wanted to speak very briefly on the additional funding for SEND staffing put forward on this year's budget. Councillor Harding and myself have had quite a list of casework from this really complex topic, and I am pleased that the wider issue has been recognised this year. I cannot imagine the stress and confusion families navigating the assessment process for children with additional needs, and I feel that anything we can do as a council is only going to be a positive in supporting some of our most vulnerable residents. As a person who has neurodiversity myself, I have personally had the strain of accessing supports with my disability, though incredibly minor compared to some of our ward casework. In conclusion, I am so proud we are contributing more towards SEND staffing levels, and I feel as a council that we should always strive to do better for children with disabilities and their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Timble.
Chair, I've supported the budget wholeheartedly. I was concentrating on the clean and green area of the budget. I may go slightly into other areas before I finish. Thank Councillor Warren side up to me for recognising the income being raised by recycled waste. Not only about the North East recycled waste, we've also taken in recyclates from South Gloucester and Bristol in the last 12 months. We're either repackaged it for them or recycled it ourselves and made a profit which goes back into the actual clean and green system itself and helps council budgets each year. We're not just satisfied with that as well. Working with the commercial sector as well, we're looking to get them to recycle more across the area. Government legislation coming later this year insists they recycle rather than just dump waste, which they've been doing in the past. We're also trialling new recycling bags throughout the district at the moment, which will allow the waste to be contained, recycled waste to be contained a lot more tightly, not blow around your streets, hence getting more recycled waste going through the system itself. So innovations are continuing and we continue pushing to ensure that we have a cleaner and greener environment. In this year's budget as well, we've also put additional money in for street cleaning and weed removal, which will help keep the area cleaner and greener itself. So that positive movements forward on every single issue we're actually doing in the clean and green area. Remember, we do not use any chemical weed killers. One thing this group will not be doing. Also looking at the future issues as well, we will not be going down the route of other councils introducing 3 weekly and 4 weekly rubbish collections. We're sticking to the 2-week collection period during this administration and we continue to push that forward. When we move on to looking at decarbonisation of the council's fleet of vehicles, a lot of these are council vehicles going out collecting your waste and collecting your recycling. Decarbonisation is taking place as we speak at the moment. It will continue through the programme until the fleet is fully decarbonised, probably end of 2027. So 2 years from now, we shall fully decarbonise fleet, which is good news. Councillor Warren mentioned issues of actually regenerating power on the buildings. The Keynsham Recycling Centre has solar panels on the roof. Until recently, it was not actually exported to the grid. That matter has now been sorted, so Councillor Warren's programme of increasing the megawatts actually being generated will increase massively. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Lucy Hodge.
Thank you, Chair. In a year when 30 English councils have been granted bailouts to avoid bankruptcy, we are grateful for the prudent management of our finance team, but should not forget that our council tax remains one of the lowest in the region and we face many challenges. Given this context, and having yet again increased budgets for priority services, we have worked hard to find an additional sum to deliver new initiatives that reflect our manifesto promises. Residents want to see a clean and green environment, sustainable travel choices and improvements for young people. To this end, we have found a small revenue sum for priorities and made it go a long way. You will hear more from colleagues, but I'm very pleased this budget brings 2 new rapid response clean and green lorry crews to tackle graffiti, litter and weed removal over and above the normal service, new fortnightly inspections of residential streets for litter, a trial P&R buses running to 11:30 p.m. 6 days a week, funding to introduce a new Clark Hub scheme in North East Somerset, and an increase in the number of school streets delivered next year to at least 3. We've invested in road signs which display vehicle speeds, an extra tool to tackle speeding. And whilst we continue our campaign with WECA for our slice of the cake for bus improvements, we've found an extra £50,000 to support non-commercial routes. As chair of the Neighbourhood Sale Advisory Board, which tends to pick up requests for stopgap funding when services have been cut, I'm pleased this budget provides a sustainable footing for the reintroduction of youth club services within Bath, reversing sweeping cuts by the Tory administration in 2019. A recent Institute of Fiscal Studies report found that local government cuts to youth clubs specifically was a key factor in increased knife crime and poor academic achievement. This budget gets us back on track with youth club provision. Turning to highways priorities, the capital budget for local highways infrastructure, formerly the TIP, brings an emphasis on safety improvements for walking, weekling and cycling. Sincere thanks must go to our highways team for meeting the challenge of a much expanded programme of works this year. Again, we are significantly adding to this capital budget, increasing it from a static DFT grant of 1.163 million to over 2.5 million, And within this sum, for local ward schemes specifically, we've increased the funding from typically around £600,000 in previous years to £1.8 million, 3 times more spending, bringing more pedestrian crossings, more traffic calming measures and more 20-mile-an-hour zones. As well as maintaining existing infrastructure, this year's programme provides for 31 new ward schemes with many improvements to routes to schools. Again, more than half the schemes will be located in North East Somerset, supporting our rural communities. This is an administration determined to deliver on its manifesto promises, seek value for money and get things done. I'm pleased that this budget does just that.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Halsall.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair. I commend Councillor Elliott and his team in achieving this budget, which is not just about having to increase the council tax or making cuts, but it's about investing in services in line with the overall objectives of this council to improve people's lives. Specifically, I'd like to thank Councillor May for his unwavering support in helping me as the Council's member advocate for engagement with students in putting forward the case to secure a more sustainable means of funding the Student Community Partnership. Many comments that we receive from residents is that students don't pay council tax. As we see a continued increase in the number of students who are choosing to study and live in our area, they are still entitled to the services that this council provides and have the right to engage and indeed vote. We know that this can cause pressures on permanent residents, particularly in respect of housing and neighbourhoods, yet through the SCP, the majority of which is funded by our 2 universities, this council's contribution, previously funded through SIL, will secure the employment of a highly proactive manager and 2 community wardens. The wardens carry out daily rounds across a number of inner Bath wards, and certainly from my ward's point of view, I've seen a decline in complaints to myself, as other councillors hopefully have as well, and the complaints to the Environmental Protection Team and Council Connect. The SCP frequently engage with communities in respect of concerns over parking, irresponsible waste storage and noise through proactive door-knocking campaigns and actively signpost permanent residents as to who to turn to if they do sadly have issues with their student neighbours, but this also applies vice versa. The SCP is not just about minimising the impacts on the council and permanent residents, it supports our student friends during this time in their city, during their time in this city, who contribute so much, dealing with welfare concerns, bus issues, problems with landlords, working with licensees on safety in the nighttime economy, providing guidance on river safety and promoting sustainability initiatives. One in particular is the Pact for Good campaign, where we've saved, well, the SCP saved £36,000 going to landfill, which went directly to the British Heart Foundation. £47,000 is modest in a council budget, but I nevertheless appreciate is a difficult find, but will deliver real benefits to our shared city and the district as a whole, and I hope can be secured in future budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall. Councillor Cristando.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll be very brief. As everyone's been using AI to scroll through this budget to pick out bits that relate to their ward, I'm going to do likewise, and I'd like to thank the administration for including £100,000 of SIL funding into the Radstock Trinity Church project, which is moving now at some speed. I'd also like to remind the administration that youth don't just live in Bath, and if you're going to put investment into youth provision, you could also put some investment into other areas, because at the moment, the parish areas of Bath and North East Somerset have to fund youth services for themselves. So if we're dishing the money around at some point in time, let's have a little fairness and equity over.
Thank you, Councillor Dando. Councillor Paul Crossley.
Thank you, Chair. Just one brief point. Our area, 1/3 of our area is washed over by 2 national landscapes. National landscapes is the new term for area of outstanding natural beauty. So that's the Cotswolds and the Mendip Hills. So I'm delighted that we are in this budget maintaining our funding to those 2 bodies. It's not small, but they are still fully funded for next year. And I shall be lobbying the Cabinet member responsible for that next year that we do have an inflation increase to the budget to those 2 bodies, because they do a lot of good work on our chalk and limestone escarpments.
Thank you, Councillor Crossley. Councillor Alison Bourne.
Thank you, Chair. We have an ageing population in Bath and North East Somerset, so demand for adult social care services is increasing. Services are also more expensive than they used to be due to cost of living pressures, employment costs and staff shortages. The additional funding in this year's budget ensures that we can provide the right support for people with higher levels of need and that we can continue to fund lighter touch preventative services for many more of our residents, enabling them to stay independent for longer. In the longer term, central government cannot continue to expect local authorities to manage the increasing costs of adult social care, with the burden of responsibility falling on council taxpayers and the individuals who fund their own care. Dame Louise Casey's forthcoming review is very welcome, but she is not starting with a blank sheet of paper. There has already been considerable research into the possible solutions for adult social care, and she must report sooner rather than later. In the meantime, I'm very grateful for the support this administration has made to our local services. I also really welcome the investment in universal services that help improve the lives of all our residents. This includes more funding to upgrade and maintain our pavements, funding to expand the clean and green teams that help keep our streets clean, funding for more school streets that improve safety near schools, and money to extend park and ride services that will help reduce reliance on cars, improving air quality and reducing congestion within Bath. The capital investment for improved sports services in Odd Down is also very welcome and will enable more people to engage in accessible and affordable exercise, which will help improve the health of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vaughan. And lastly, Councillor Michelle Doherty.
Thank you. Hopefully you're all still awake. This administration is delivering a sound and balanced budget, one that protects frontline services, especially for our most vulnerable residents, while continuing to invest in the priorities that matter to our communities. We are achieving this despite significant financial pressures and ongoing uncertainty in local government funding. Thanks to prudent financial management, Baines remains a well-run authority. We have a responsible administration that's committed to sound stewardship of public funds. Unlike some councils elsewhere, we're not facing financial collapse or seeking permission to raise council tax beyond the cap. Instead, we're maintaining stability while making targeted investments to improve people's lives. I'm particularly pleased to see that the ward that myself and Councillor Kelly represent, Newbridge, featuring so highly in this budget, with funding for the long-awaited pedestrian crossing at the bottom of Old Newbridge Hill. This will make a real difference to safety and accessibility, especially for the many elderly residents that live in that area and the schools of children from Oldfield School that use that road every day. Likewise, the allocation of funds to progress the next stage of residents' parking zone in the area south of Newbridge Road is a welcome step in managing parking pressures there fairly and sustainably. We are continuing to invest in addressing the climate emergency, promoting active travel and enhancing our public spaces through initiatives such as increased clean and green funding. But we must also be clear. Local authorities need longer-term financial settlements to plan properly for the future. The ongoing crisis in social care funding remains one of the biggest challenges that we face, and without urgent government action, councils across the country will continue to struggle. Despite these pressures, this budget demonstrates our commitment to protecting vital services and delivering on our promises to residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. I did miss somebody off the list, so I'm going to allow him to have a statement. Councillor Paul Roper.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it very brief as we're into AI summaries. I'll just give you 3 points as to why I'll be supporting this budget. Corporate estate decarbonisation programme, £4 million allocated over 4 years to help us achieve our net zero goals. Repair of the Guildhall roof, £4 million over the next 2 years. I don't know whether you ever go up to the second floor, but there's quite a lot of brown ceilings up there. The roof needs fixing. Despite all the financial pressures, we are fixing the roof. And finally, very quick word for heritage services. The budgeted P&L for our fantastic Roman baths next year has the equivalence of reducing our council tax by £167, which is to be applauded. The heritage team, I'd like to think it's not party political. The leader of Heritage Services is an outstanding individual. We've got world-class professionals running that operation at the Roman Baths, and we're very blessed to have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Roper. So I'm going to ask Councillor Mark Elliott to sum up. We've got 5 minutes.
Thanks, colleagues, for your contributions. I'd like to address some of the things that have been brought up to the Labour Group. Councillor Moss asked, is it more of the same? The answer to that is that we are making the changes we need to make in order to address the pressures in social care, but they take time because it's primarily about building in-area provision. One cannot just snap one's fingers and do that. And things like the Labour Central Government holding up decisions to release the funding for building of our new schools is just making it more difficult. I'd also point out that the contingency that we put into the budget is precisely to acknowledge the risks around social care and to protect the overall budget against the pressures in those individual areas. Councillor Hughes, scrutiny. I've always said I'm very happy to help the PDS panel better understand the budget. I will repeat what I said at the PDS meeting. These papers take many weeks to produce. If you want further information, please let us know what extra information is wanted well in advance. I'm very, very happy to facilitate those requests, and officers will, I'm sure, be happy to provide any information the panel wants as soon as it's available. Councillor Wright, I have to clarify that we have not cut either adults or children's social care. I think you suggested there were cuts in social care. There are not. We are increasing the funding in social care quite considerably to the tune of £6.5 million. With regard to the CAS revenue, I think you suggested it had been frittered away somehow. It's been used to fund the Scholars Way project, local walking and cycling schemes, development of the Transport Action Plan, supported the local active travel team. It supported the school streets, which I know we're all very keen on. And £2.5 million of it went to WECA for their transport schemes. Councillor Warren, just to pick up on one point, I think you suggested at some point that we'd be taking money from reserves. We are absolutely not taking money from reserves in order to fund day-to-day spending. That is not happening here. As I said in my opening speech, I'm proud of this budget. I think the whole Cabinet and the wider Lib Dem group can be proud of it too. I'd like to thank all the finance officers for their incredibly hard work in preparing it over the previous 6 months, really. And to all the council officers for their input into that process. It's a huge undertaking. Given the wider context of uncertainty and financial constraints on local government, we are proposing a budget that shows we care about social care and that we will rise to meet the extreme challenges that those services are facing. But not only that, it manages to fund improvements across a range of other areas, focusing on our net zero commitments, our work to improve the area for walking and cycling, that helps keep our streets cleaner and greener, that helps improve our engagement with residents, that allows us room to innovate. They're all areas we committed to in our manifesto back in 2023, and which help to follow through on the Council's core purpose to improve the lives of the people of Bath and North East Somerset. I propose we move to the vote.
So we're now going to vote on the budget and council tax 25-26. Has everybody voted that wishes to vote? Can I ask Joe to announce the results?
Yes, thank you. That's 36 votes for, 8 against and 7 abstentions.
So the budget is carried. Thank you. So we're now going to move on to number 9, Treasury Management and Investment Strategy Statement. Can I ask Councillor Mark Elliott to move that?
Yeah, sorry you've got to hear from me again, but this is actually a pretty important paper. It sets out the Treasury Management Strategy, which is the strategy that guides the way the Council manages its borrowing and investments. As the report highlights, the Council has borrowed and invested substantial sums of money. The borrowing at the end of December was just under 270 million, and the investments are just over 43 million. And the Council is therefore exposed to financial risks, including the loss of invested funds and the revenue effect of changing interest rates. So the successful identification, monitoring and control of financial risk are therefore central to the Council's prudent financial management. Treasury risk management at the Council is conducted within the framework of the SITFA Code of Practice, which requires the authority to approve a Treasury management strategy before the beginning of each financial year. The strategy itself which is contained in Appendix 1, sets out the Treasury limits in force, which will limit the Treasury risk and activities of the Council, the Treasury management indicators, the current Treasury position, the borrowing requirement, the prospects for interest rates, the borrowing strategy and the investment strategy. I report back regularly to both Corporate PDS and Cabinet on the Treasury management performance against the indicators set out in this strategy, and it's always a very reassuring report. Our underlying financial position is very robust, and officers do a fantastic job at making sure it remains so. So whilst it can seem quite dry, it is an important strategy document, and I commend it to you and move the recommendations set out in 2.1 and 2.2.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. May I ask Councillor Paul Roper to second that?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second the recommendations set out in the strategy statement. I think when you say Treasury management strategy at 9 o'clock of an evening after a 2.5-hour meeting, a few eyes will glaze over. But Treasury is far from dull. It's the foundations of everything that we do, and without adequate Treasury management, we're a bit sunk, really. We don't often talk about Treasury management. That's probably a good thing. Not much time is given over to it, and it is a reflection of actually how well the team do. If you think about managing cash flow for the Council, it's extremely complicated. One thinks if one is in business, for those of you who've got business experience, we all know that if you get your cash flow wrong, it grinds things to a halt very, very quickly indeed, and poses existential threats. Few businesses are as complex as a local authority, and one can only imagine the difficulties the Treasury management team face in predicting our cash needs. And I can honestly say, if they were doing a bad job of it, we'd all know a lot more about it, because the Council simply couldn't function. So it's a credit to our team that we rarely need to talk about Treasury management. I think we should also take comfort from the fact that this Council does not just have borrowings, but has significant cash savings and investments that in themselves provide significant returns. And you can be assured that all our investments are very conventional, dare I say dull. Dull is very good when it comes to Treasury management. There are no phantom solar farms or anything remotely similar in our portfolio. We all have very safe investments. So to conclude, our Treasury team plan our cash, loans and investments in the tens and indeed hundreds of millions of pounds. They do not do this on a whim and gut instinct. They work within the framework of the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy's Treasury Management in the Public Services. That's quite a mouthful. The key aspects of this are set out in the paper, and I'm happy to second the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roper. Do I have anybody who wishes to make a statement on this? No? So we'll move to the vote. Thank you.
I was going to say, no, it isn't.
So has everybody voted that wishes to vote? Okay, and the announcement, Joan?
It's unanimous, thank you.
So the Treasury Management report has been agreed and accepted. Thank you. So we're going to move on to item 10, proportionality review. So I want to explain that an alternative proportionality table has been circulated, which will automatically come into play should any member vote against. May I ask Councillor Kevin Guy to move this item?
Thank you, Chair. And for brevity, because it's the time of the evening, I am more than happy to move the recommendations as written in the paper.
Thank you very much. May I ask Councillor Sarah Warren to second it?
Yep, happy to second the paper.
Okay. So I have Councillor Toby Simon wishes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to explain to Council why I'm going to vote against this proposal. The so-called Restructuring Implementation Committee, set up about 15 years ago, is responsible for senior appointments and organisation. It's currently constituted by the group leaders. This means the majority party only has one vote,
and is in a minority of 4-1. Now, cross-party working is a very good thing, but it mustn't get in the way of accountability. As they say in Washington, personnel is policy. The administration has the right to ensure that it is served by an officer team in whom it has full confidence. It was wrong that the Cabinet member for Finance, who was in attendance, only had an advisory role at the meetings to select the top finance job in the authority. I'm taking personal responsibility and acting individually in withholding consent for non-proportionality on this committee. I don't think it's good governance, and I think I should exercise my vote, so I'm going to be voting as an individual on this matter. I believe that informal arrangements were made that will allow the other group leaders who are not going to be voting members of this committee to be in attendance. I think that's sensible. And I'll be suggesting that the Constitution Working Group has a look at the arrangements for dealing with HR matters in this authority, and I'll bring forward a paper to it. Thank you.
Councillor Simon. Councillor Robin Moss.
Interesting. I've been a member of this council for a number of years now, but before I was a councillor on Baines, I was a councillor in Bristol. And there's a number of differences between Bristol and Bath and North East Somerset. I haven't seen any councillors punch each other while I've been a Baines councillor. I haven't seen any councillors suggest inserting a toothbrush in an inappropriate orifice to another councillor. And, most importantly, on Baines, there is genuine cross-party working when it comes to the administration and governance of this council. Because certainly on some issues, I would say that we all do appreciate that we are Bath and North East Somerset councillors as much, if not more, than we have our political labels. And I think it's interesting that this proposal comes from, I'm afraid, the backbenches and not from the Cabinet. And there is an expression, if it's not bust, don't try to fix it. And I'm afraid I hear nothing in what you're saying, Toby, as to identifying a problem. I've been to a number of RIC meetings over the 10 years I have been a group leader, and I'm not aware of any instance where opposition group leaders have outvoted or tried to exercise their votes in a way that would obstruct or go against the wishes of the council leader. And I think of a time where there was an instance, I think, on a RIC, Dina, when you were leader, where there was actually a difference of opinion when you were in a minority, and actually group leaders deferred to the fact that you were a council leader and the fact that you led a majority group on this council. So I think it's disappointing that you decided to vote against Toby. Thanks for creating a bit more work, because it will mean that other council, other group leaders will be able to, I hope, attend, speak and the rest. And I'm sure we can do that without any reference to papers or otherwise at a fairly full Constitution Working Group. But you have your right to do that. And I should equally have the right to say that I think what you're suggesting is absolute nonsense.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Councillor Tim Warren.
Yeah, I've sat on the RIC both as council leader with quite a big majority and now with a rather small minority. However, exactly, yeah. I had my group meeting on the way today and had a bit of an argument myself and came out of discussion. But on this one, I felt I had as much input as when I was leader as I do now, or vice versa. It could come, some of the decisions could come very political, and they're very important decisions. And this actually takes the politics out of it. Because if Kevin makes a decision on the big redundancy, we can't have a go until we all agree. And it's as simple as that, really. I'm quite happy to sit on it or not, to be honest with you, because I can then use it against leadership over there. However, I don't think that's the way we should work. I agree with Robin that it's actually set there for the good of Bath and North East Somerset Council and not individuals. Councillor Elliott was at the meeting particularly, and what he said we would take as much or more notice of than what we are thinking, because he actually knows who he wants to work with. He has to work with them. So, although you don't have a vote, I don't think it makes a difference really, because everything is taken into consideration. So actually, I don't think this is a great idea. I think it works well like it is.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Councillor Sean Hughes.
Thank you. I certainly agree with both Councillor Moss and Councillor Warren on this one. The saying, if it ain't broke, certainly applies to this situation. And the RIC has worked extremely well without any party politics. So I'm not quite sure of Councillor Simon's motivations here. The interview process that they referred to, the Cabinet member he's referred to was a key member of the panel and played a pivotal role in the interview process and influenced the outcome. The decision was reached very amicably through conversation and non-political consensus. So the RIC does need the support of all the groups to be effective.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Yes, just to support the other group leaders on this meeting that we have had over the last few years, and the role of the Green Group in that is that I have found that it's been non-political and it's been a useful process for us to ensure that we make good decisions across the council that can be used properly to ensure that we have good delivery from officers. So by challenging this in the way that you probably are causing more bad than good, and that's not a useful way forward.
Thanks to Councillor Wright. So just bear with me. So I'm going to go back. Does anybody else want to speak? No. So I'm going to go back to ask Councillor Guy to just sum up for us.
Well, I moved it as written, but I believe it falls because somebody voted against it. So
we haven't voted yet.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask now Michael to just explain this process, what has happened.
Okay, so whenever we welcome a new councillor to the chamber, we're required by law to look at the proportionality, and in this instance, the rule is that all of our committees must be proportional unless collectively we choose not to be the case, and it's been custom and practice to choose not to have a proportionate committee for the RIC, so that all the group leaders sit on that RIC. There has been circulated by Democratic Services an alternative proportionality table, and if any member of the chamber votes against what was circulated with the papers, then this alternative proportionality table will automatically take effect. Thank you.
Thank you. So obviously voting has been taken out of our hands because of that one vote. So I bring this part of the agenda to an end. So we're do we still need to vote? But there's that's been done, isn't it? Right, okay, so we're going to go to the vote on the proportionality table. And it's not a name vote, okay? Right.
I've got to pick up extra places. The others are getting busy.
It's the RIC, Paul. It's the restructuring committee. It's basically staffing.
Yes, okay, so we have 48 in favour and 1 against.
So it's the alternative proportionality table, which means it's, can I say this? It's, for the RIC, it's 3 Liberal Democrats, 1 Labour, 1 Independent. Thank you. So we're moving on to statements.
As a result, as leader of the Labour opposition, can I propose that the members of the Green group and the Conservative group are invited to the RIC as observers with full speaking rights, but no voting rights? Although I have to say I can't remember when the RIC has ever voted. So can we revert to where we are?
Well, no, I can follow that up outside the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, because we've voted on this. But yeah, I'll follow that up.
Okay. Yeah, so that's been noted, Robin. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to statements from councillors, and I believe Councillor Jackson has a statement. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And in talking about the Select Advisory Council for Religious Education, I'm continuing the theme of the importance of cross-party working, because this is a committee associated with the council, not an outside body, on which people volunteer, work, and represent the council, irrespective of their political views, in a non-political cross-party way, if it's possible to say that. And I'm very privileged, I think, to be the council representative, and Dr. Pankania is now joining me, and of course he's a different party, a different background, but I'm sure will make absolutely fantastic contribution. And during my time working for this committee, or council, I suppose, technically, we've also had the support of the cabinet member and of the chair of the scrutiny panel to which he answers, Councillor Romero, and that has given weight and value. And I'm convinced that this is the way forward on important matters like faith and belief and what should be taught in schools. I, however, would like to scroll back a little bit to say, first of all, that I very much appreciate the help, the support. You were one of the first, Madam Chair, to send me greetings when I became ill. I've had some lovely cards from people, and in the month that I've really been away, it's been wonderful to know that this support is there for somebody when they're really quite ill and becoming more disabled. So thank you all very much. That is, to me, the most important thing. And the second thing, of course, I could, keeping in that theme for a minute, I could, of course, spend all my time explaining what shingles are, how they affect you, where you go to, but it's not that concerns me. What concerns me is the health of this council, the way this council thinks, the kind of ethos, and more generally, Sacreo's really important contribution to the climate, the ethical climate, the standards that we expect in this country, and that's why I'm asking, a major reason why I'm asking you to support the measures that I've proposed in the statement. Secondly, I had thought that I would be proposing an amendment to the budget, but actually I think probably it's a good thing I didn't get the paperwork in time in the current situation. But I want to thank the officers who worked so hard, both to produce our Sacre papers, to help with this situation where I'm giving a statement, to help with the research that is behind the statement that you can read. And I'm afraid the statement's now a little bit out of date because more facts have come to light, and the general way in which things have proceeded. So thank you to the officers. I do, though, sometimes feel that we perhaps don't understand the importance of what is flowing past us and why these things matter. And I had hoped that I could get in an emergency amendment. As I said, it would not actually have been at all appropriate to go into the context of the budget. And what Dr. Pankania and I wanted to propose was, Council recognises that the Sacre has a financial crisis requiring emergency action and possibly emergency subvention in order to fulfil its legal obligations and as laid down in successive government legislation. And that we have a problem because we have, on our current budget, got not only to do our statutory work, which is things like monitoring how schools are delivering religious education, what they have put on their websites, and perhaps the most important thing of all, which actually very few schools we've discovered do, is advertise the fact you can opt out of RE. You do not have to sit there listening to RE at all, and similarly teachers can opt out. We, of course, do this monitoring. We provide materials to help and support our schools, and we also have special training days, for example, on Holocaust, how to deliver Holocaust Memorial Day. But we, on the other hand, not only have our maintenance, as it were, our monitoring to do, which the budget provides for just about, we have to, we have to do the agreed syllabus.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, just half a minute. Remember, the Saviour came at midnight. We also have to do the agreed syllabus, and this is why I'm asking Council to listen sympathetically and to ask the Cabinet member and to find the necessary funds so we can do both parts of our duty. Thank you.
Thank you. Can group leaders indicate if they have a factual question for Councillor Jackson? Did you hear that, Eleanor?
No, I didn't.
So Councillor Guy said that the Cabinet member will look into those issues for you. Excellent. So I'm going to bring this meeting to a close at 9:22. Have a good evening, everyone.